Chapter 884. Dong Xingting could also be considered extremely intelligent. Before this, he had already calculated everything. Based on the rankings, even if Qin Wendian was ranked first, he would still be at a disadvantage when compared to Hua Taishu and Gusu Tianqi. However, everyone understood in their hearts that the weight of the final battle was the heaviest. But since Dong Xingting was the host of the immortal banquet in place of his father, Dongxing Heaven Emperor, no matter what he said, nobody would dare to refute him. Before this, Dong Xingting's targeting of Qin Wendian was still a little obscure. But now, as Qin Wendian stood out, it was already more obvious. Naturally, everyone also understood that before this, Dong Xingting had given Qin Wendian a chance but was rejected by Qin Wendian. This seemed to have already determined the ending. Just like what the Deep Flame Immortal King had said, the ending was already set in stone. Your Highness. At this moment, Princess Liuli called out. Dong Xingting turned his gaze over and stared at Princess Liuli as he smiled. Princess, what's the matter? Your Highness once said that if Qin Wendian is outstanding enough, he would definitely be able to enter the top 3. But why are you saying this now? Princess Liuli replied. I'm only a little curious. If it's inconvenient for your Highness to say it, it's fine as well. After all, this is the immortal banquet hosted by the Dongshengshan Gate, I shouldn't be too nosy. I'm sure Princess's question is also the same question in the hearts of many. Dong Xingting laughed. For this immortal banquet, firstly, it's to see the geniuses of our Eastern Sage 13 prefectures. Secondly, it's to recruit geniuses into the immortal sect, and thirdly, it's to recruit disciples for my royal father. Princess might not know this, but Qin Wendian's talent is so outstanding that my royal father wanted to take him in as a disciple, allowing him to follow the Deep Flame Immortal King for 1,000 years. However, he wasn't willing to endure for 1,000 years, feeling that it was too long, and rejected my royal father's suggestion. Hence, my royal father was unhappy and decided to retract his decision. This time, Qin Wendian's comeback was originally a good thing. Before this, I've also asked him if he was willing to undergo 1,000 years of tempering if he was given another chance. However, he rejected once again. Princess has already seen for yourself that his personality is too arrogant, disregarding everything in his eyes. I'm worried that my royal father wouldn't be happy about this. Gusu Tianqi, I believe my royal father would be even more satisfied. In addition, Gusu Tianqi's performance in the immortal banquet was already extremely domineering. Although he was defeated in the final battle, he wasn't inferior to Gusu Tianqi by much. Gusu Tianqi is like this, Hua Taishu is the same as well. If Gusu Tianqi enters the top 3 while Hua Taishu doesn't, wouldn't that be too unfair? Dong Xingting spoke frankly with assurance. After which, he turned to Qin Wendian. Naturally, there's no harm in doing so. Our Dongshengshan Gate will still send Supreme Immortal Kings to personally guide Qin Wendian and observe him. If his performance is outstanding, he would still be able to become a sage child of our sect and even gain the favor of my royal father. This can also be considered a test for him, to see how his temperament is. Dong Xingting explained in such detail was also for the sake of his future plans. He was targeting Qin Wendian, and now that Princess Liuli had already seen through it, he might as well be frank with his intentions to avoid any misunderstandings from Princess Liuli. If news of this were to spread to Qin Er's ears in the future, although it would still be suspicious, at the very least, he could justify his words on the surface. In order to prevent Qin Wendian from entering the top 3, he could only do so. Understood. Princess Liuli nodded her head lightly and didn't say anything more. I have no intentions of entering the top 3. It's not that I'm arrogant, but other than Qin Wendian, for the other participants, only Gusu Tianqi and Jun Mengchen might be able to threaten me. But even so, the probability of victory is 50-50. Earlier, Qin Wendian has already defeated me. If he were to replace me in the top 3, I wouldn't have any objections. At this moment, Hua Taishu stared at Dong Xingting as he spoke, his words causing many to be bewildered. Seems like Hua Taishu wasn't interested in taking the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor as his master, but he was extremely respectful towards his master, the myriad incarnations Immortal King. And as expected, at this moment, the beautiful eyes of the myriad incarnations Immortal King flashed with a consoling smile. The 100-year grand event of the Dongshengshan Gate, how can it be a child's play? I've already seen the performance of the geniuses present, how can I back down? Dongsheng Ting faintly spoke, causing Hua Taishu's expression to stiffen. However, he only saw Qin Wendian smiling at him. Hua Taishu, there's no need to say anything more. The Dongshengshan Gate is the leader of the 13 prefectures. His Highness Dongsheng Ting naturally has his own plans in mind. Upon hearing Qin Wentian's words, expressions of interest appeared on the faces of the spectators. Did Qin Wentian give up? Ultimately, his ranking could only be rank number 4. His 3 fellow apprentice brothers were all so dazzling, radiating resplendent light. However, it seems that only Jun Mengchen would be able to enter the top 3. Qin Wentian could only be ranked number 4, and Zi Qingxian could only be ranked number 5. Senior brother. Jun Mengchen was still somewhat unconvinced. Mengchen. Qin Wentian directly interrupted what Jun Mengchen wanted to say. He then continued, trust in your Highness Dongsheng Ting. For the next battle, you will challenge Gusu Tianqi. If you win, I believe your ranking would still be able to advance. You have to do your best in this battle. Right. Jun Mengchen nodded heavily. The anger in his body was about to erupt forth. His silhouette flickered as he directly landed in the center of the platform. He stared at Gusu Tianqi as he spoke, I will win this battle for sure. Gusu Tianqi opened his eyes as a terrifying beam of light shot out from them, terrifying to the extreme. Jun Mengchen would win for sure. In that case, wouldn't he, Gusu Tianqi, be defeated? You won't be able to win. Gusu Tianqi stepped out as a terrifying heat wave instantly gushed forth from him. 9 blazing suns floated in the air as an incomparably gigantic furnace appeared. Numerous long spears could be seen within the furnace, each of them resembling a blazing sun spear. The Gusu Tianqi at this moment was too terrifying. The instant he appeared, he radiated a towering might that caused the hearts of the spectators to tremble. Powerful. The spectators stared at Gusu Tianqi as their hearts trembled. On the other side, Jun Mengchen stood proudly on the platform. Behind him, the shadow of the ancient king manifested, resembling a supreme king. A crack opened up in his body as a brilliant light flashed, transforming into a clear skies worldly diagram that floated in the air, resembling the boundless starry skies. This clear skies worldly diagram was like a world of starry skies, and within it, there were signs of life. This clear skies worldly diagram existed in the center of that supreme king, as though it was the body of that supreme king. The spectators stared intently at the clear skies worldly diagram as their hearts trembled. What ability was this exactly? The entire starry skies seemed to be enveloped by a supreme king, and the body of this king was like a painting of the starry skies. It was rumored that for those with heaven-defying physiques, their astral souls and constellations were all destined by fate. Was Jun Mengchen such an existence? 2 supreme geniuses, in addition to Hua Taishu's eyes of samsara, the top 3 rankers are truly 3 supreme geniuses. From a certain perspective, it wasn't wrong for Dongsheng Ting to choose these 3 as the top 3 rankers. Qin Wentian was also very strong, his overall combat prowess was extremely high. However, he had yet to display an ability that would stun the spectators in an instant. Such a person could be considered a supreme genius, but his malleability might not be as good as the rest. Gusu Tianqi walked step by step towards Jun Mengchen with the blazing furnace in his hand. Half of the sky was burning, while the other half was Jun Mengchen's constellation, the Battle King's shadow, and the clear skies worldly diagram. Abruptly, Gusu Tianqi pointed his finger forward. From the terrifying blazing furnace, numerous long spears shot out, directly burning Jun Mengchen's Battle King armor. Terrifying sizzling sounds rang out as the blazing furnace constellation erupted forth with destructive flames. Jun Mengchen abruptly clenched his fists as a supreme king glow radiated from him. With a roar, countless war chariots gushed forth from the clear sky's worldly diagram. These war chariots seemed to be forged from the toughest materials, and as they soared through the air, they collided with the long spears, directly exploding apart. Roar! Jun Mengchen howled as he stepped out. From the clear sky's worldly diagram, an incomparably violent windstorm manifested. The war chariots soared through the air while the demonic beasts frenziedly attacked. Their speed was also extremely fast, wanting to engulf the entire sky in the blink of an eye. Too crazy, is such an attack really the ability of a celestial phenomenon ascendant? With a single roar, he can annihilate countless ordinary characters at the same level as him. The hearts of the spectators trembled. The eyes of those immortal kings were all blazing with heat as they stared at this battle. The blazing flames radiating from Gusu Tianqi grew even more terrifying. What was even more terrifying was that behind the 9 suns, 9 silhouettes appeared, all of them resembling divinities. Kill! Gusu Tianqi roared in rage as the power of multiple constellations erupted forth at the same time. The 9 silhouettes pulled out their long spears from the 9 suns and blasted outwards. Boundless flames gushed forth, transforming into a terrifying solar storm that swept outwards, incinerating everything in its path into nothingness. The number 1 genius of the Eastern Prefecture, is this the true strength of Gusu Tianqi? The spectators stared at this scene. 9 generations of soul inheritors, each generation of immortal kings. Were those 9 silhouettes the shadows of the 9 generations of immortal kings? Such an attack, could it really be countered by someone at the same level as them? Maybe only Jun Mengchen would be able to do so. The clear sky worldly diagram behind him started to churn madly as terrifying currents of energy converged. Jun Mengchen inclined his head as an incomparably resplendent and terrifying light cascaded onto him. He lifted his fists as a boundless light radiated from them, exuding a sense of supremacy. Kill! Jun Mengchen roared in rage. The fist art he used to defeat Song Ao appeared once more, but this time, it was even stronger than before. The spectators only saw countless fist shadows piercing through the heavens and earth, as though there were thousands of fist lights that directly blasted into the solar storm. In an instant, numerous holes appeared on the solar storm, as cracks spread out in all directions like spiderwebs. Jun Mengchen's fist art was still as powerful as ever, capable of breaking through anything. Below, Zi Qingxian stared at the battle between the two of them as she sighed in her heart. Seems like she was truly one of the weaker ones. Before this, Gusu Tianqi hadn't unleashed his full strength yet. After she returned, she had to work even harder to become stronger. Mengchen will do his best to help you win this battle, pulling down Gusu Tianqi's ranking. But even so, he doesn't intend to let you enter the top 3. But at the very least, you have to defeat him to prove that you've come before. Are you confident? Zi Qingxian stared at the air as she spoke in a low voice. Naturally, she was asking Qin Wentian who was beside her. Qin Wentian stared at the battle in the air as his eyes gleamed with a terrifying sharpness. Defeat? How can that be enough? Chapter 885. Zi Qingxian cast a deep glance at Qin Wentian. Seems like Qin Wentian has yet to give up on the top 3 rankings. It was just that she had no idea what method he would use to contend for the top 3 rankings. Dong Xingting didn't want him to enter, how could he do so? Slowly shifting her gaze over, she stared at the battle in the air. Jun Mengchen and Gusu Tianqi were still fighting. Both of them were so powerful that it was inconceivable, too terrifying. Gusu Tianqi brandished his sun's spear, each spear strike radiating the light of the sun. When he shot out, terrifying beams of sunlight would erupt forth, capable of melting everything. However, Jun Mengchen only needed a single punch to destroy all of them. His fist technique was world-shaking, it was the fist of a king. Each of his punches contained boundless might within them. In addition, the speed of their attacks was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, they clashed countless times. Rumble. Rumbling sounds rang out from the sun furnace as terrifying flames akin to lava gushed out, transforming into a world-shaking long spear. The 9 silhouettes stretched their palms out as the incomparably gigantic long spears landed in their hands. Gusu Tianqi himself also wielded a long spear. Stepping out, a surge of destructive might gushed towards Jun Mengchen. Die! With a thunderous roar, Gusu Tianqi's long spear pierced out. The gigantic silhouettes unleashed a world-shaking spear strike, locking down the heavens and earth, wanting to nail Jun Mengchen to death in the air. Jun Mengchen howled madly. A fearsome storm barrier gathered before him, yet under the might of the spear technique, it was shattered apart unceasingly. The clear sky worldly diagram revolved frenziedly as a supreme might flowed unceasingly into Jun Mengchen, causing his king aura to grow even stronger. The king armor on his body was like a crown, king gloves appeared on his hands, and a battle king dragon carriage appeared beneath his feet. Only to see Jun Mengchen lifting his fists as the chaotic energy in the clear sky worldly diagram flowed towards him. The entire space was filled with an aura of desolation. This was an aura that originated from chaos, and was extremely ancient. The space around him trembled violently. This entire space was like a chaotic world, filled with endless war. That was a world of desolation and Jun Mengchen was the king of that world. Numerous heaven-shaking long spears pierced through the chaotic currents, allowing the destructive qi to gush over. They had to kill Jun Mengchen no matter what. Even if Jun Mengchen was a supreme king, he still had to die. The 9 silhouettes of Gusu Tianqi were like 9 mighty immortal kings. Each of the long spears stabbed out with the might of a sure-kill spear, capable of shattering the heavens and earth. The king aura radiating from Jun Mengchen grew denser and denser. The crowd inclined their heads and stared at this scene. Even immortal kings felt their hearts trembling. This was only at the celestial phenomenon realm. In the future, if Jun Mengchen broke through to immortal foundation or immortal king, what sort of scene would that be? It was simply unimaginable. There were some people who were innately strong. For example, Jun Mengchen and Gusu Tianqi. But there were also some who were innately strong. The most obvious example was Hua Taishu. Chaotic World King Fist. Jun Mengchen roared in rage. Both his fists punched out, and at this instant, the chaotic currents in the space around him churned, transforming into boundless chaotic fist light. The violet gold king fist transformed into a corporeal violet gold fist that penetrated through space, destroying everything in its path. The boundless violet gold light was so blinding that it stung the eyes of those who looked at it. The boundless chaotic world king fist pierced through the air, clashing against the long spears as a heaven-shaking explosive sound rang out. After which, the chaotic world king fist penetrated through, destroying the long spears as it transformed into boundless violet gold light that blasted towards Gusu Tianqi. Gusu Tianqi's countenance stiffened. He stared at the all-devouring chaotic world king fist rushing over. Gathering all his strength, he struck out with his spear once more. However, rumbling sounds rang out unceasingly. The crowd only saw Gusu Tianqi's body being flung through the air as the constellation in the sky gradually dimmed before dissipating completely. Qi! Gusu Tianqi stood in the air, coughing out a mouthful of blood. His body was injured, but the pain in his heart was even greater. Gusu Tianqi participated in the once-a-100-year immortal banquet of the Dongshengshan Gate. His purpose was to become the number one, the most dazzling existence. He wouldn't allow himself to be defeated, but now, he was actually defeated. The top ranker of the eastern continent, Gusu Tianqi, was defeated. Gusu Tianqi has been defeated. Countless spectators at the immortal banquet felt their hearts trembling when they saw this scene. Jun Mengchen didn't merely display a miraculous talent, his combat prowess was unparalleled as well. Only to see at this moment, although Jun Mengchen was panting heavily, he had defeated the powerful Gusu Tianqi. This battle was sufficient for his name to resound through the entire eastern prefecture. The atmosphere on the ancient battlefield quietened down, extremely quiet. Even at the immortal banquet, no one spoke. It was as though everyone was still immersed in the conclusion of this battle. After a long time, Gusu Tianqi drew in a deep breath as he spoke, "I've lost." As the sound of his voice faded, Jun Mengchen retracted his aura. His constellation vanished and the king armor vanished as he reverted back to that harmless-looking young man. His gaze turned to Qin Wentian and Zi Qingxian as a joyful smile appeared on his face. He had won. This victory caused him to be one of the top 3 rankers. It wasn't just because of the talent he displayed, but rather, it was a combination of talent and strength. He had won. This victory caused Gusu Tianqi to have a defeat. As for him, Jun Mengchen, he had no defeats at all. Jun Mengchen then turned his gaze onto Dong Xingting as he spoke, I have no defeats at all and Gusu Tianqi is already defeated. In that case, what about my ranking? Everyone, what do you all think? Dong Xingting turned his gaze to the immortal kings at the side. Although Jun Mengchen's ranking in the first 2 rounds was slightly lower, the potential he displayed today, as well as his undefeated battle record. His Majesty would surely like him, he should be ranked first. An immortal king laughed. They naturally understood Dong Xingting's intentions, and also understood Dongsheng Heaven Emperor's intentions. Dongsheng Heaven Emperor would definitely accept Jun Mengchen as his personal disciple. Jun Mengchen and Gusu Tianqi were both disciples that Dongsheng Heaven Emperor would like. Good. Since this is the case, Jun Mengchen can be ranked first. Gusu Tianqi was defeated and should be ranked second. Dong Xingting slowly spoke, his words causing the hearts of everyone to tremble. This immortal banquet was truly filled with twists and turns. But in the end, would Jun Mengchen be ranked first? This was too unbelievable. Gusu Tianqi was only ranked second. This little fellow originally already had heaven-shaking talent. Now that His Majesty would personally nurture him, he would surely soar up into the heavens. In the Cloud Prefecture, the Idle Cloud Immortal King was extremely happy as he laughed heartily. A genius of their Cloud Prefecture would be ranked first in the Immortal Banquet. How glorious was this? It had never happened before since ancient times. However, the other Immortal Kings of the Cloud Prefecture weren't so excited. Their smiles were stiff. Cloud Prefecture, 3 of them are in the top 10, including the top ranker. Ha ha ha. The more the Idle Cloud Immortal King thought about it, the happier he got. Before this, the other Immortal Kings of the other prefectures were still bragging in front of him. Now, this was truly a formless face smacking. The Cloud Prefecture isn't bad this time around. Dong Xingting also praised, causing the Idle Cloud Immortal King to feel even more proud. This time around, he could finally hold his head up high. Jun Mengchen, I'm very optimistic about you. In the future, don't let the immortal sect down. Dong Xingting smiled as he stared at Jun Mengchen. He gave Jun Mengchen the top ranker because he wanted to recruit Jun Mengchen, making Jun Mengchen forget about the grudges between him and Jun Mengchen. But Your Highness, since I'm the top ranker, if my senior brother defeated Gusu Tianqi, why can't he be in the top 3? Jun Mengchen asked in doubt. I've already said it before. For this auction, one's talent and combat prowess will be considered. Your talent is extremely shocking and your performance in the 3rd round convinced everyone. You deserve to be the top ranker. But for Qin Wentian, if he merely defeated Gusu Tianqi, he would be ranked in the top 3 based on his performance in the 3rd round. Gusu Tianqi would be eliminated. This isn't fair. Dong Xingting explained. I won't be defeated again. Gusu Tianqi's countenance was like ice as he spoke. He had already been defeated once, yet Dong Xingting and Jun Mengchen were discussing the possibility of him losing again in public. You better rest first and recover your combat prowess. At this moment, Qin Wentian spoke, his words causing Gusu Tianqi to coldly stare at him. If you want to fight, let's do it now. Even if I defeated you, the Dongshengshan Gate doesn't intend to let me enter the top 3. Let alone when you have yet to recover to your peak condition. If I fight against you now, even if I win, I'm afraid Your Highness Dong Xingting would have something to say. Qin Wentian emotionlessly spoke, his words causing Dong Xingting to furrow his brows. Qin Wentian's words were clearly implying that the Dongshengshan Gate was targeting him. Take a rest. Before this, I'm sure you also thought that you wouldn't be defeated. But since you've already lost once, it's better to be more cautious. Qin Wentian continued when he saw the sharpness in Gusu Tianqi's eyes. Since you say so, I'll wait. Gusu Tianqi replied. After which, he sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes in meditation. The gazes of the spectators turned to Qin Wentian. The words of this fellow were filled with an intense self-confidence. The top 10 geniuses were still on the battle platform. Staring at them, the immortal kings couldn't help but to sigh in admiration. Some of them weren't weak, but they were still at the bottom of the rankings with unwillingness in their hearts. They didn't know if their state of heart would be affected by this setback and would never be able to recover from it. Most probably, there's only one more battle left. However, Dong Xingting seems to have already decided on the rankings. This battle has no influence on the rankings at all. It's just a battle for Qin Wentian to prove himself. The hearts of the spectators mused. Even the atmosphere at the immortal banquet turned much quieter. Everyone was quietly waiting for the final battle. After this battle, the once-in-100 years grand banquet would finally come to an end. After a long time, Gusu Tianqi's eyes opened as a dazzling light erupted forth, terrifying to the extreme. He stared at Qin Wentian as he asked, "Are you done?" Qin Wentian glanced at Gusu Tianqi before standing up. He stared at Dong Xingting and spoke, "I won't say anything about what happened before. Since your highness said that my performance earlier showed that my talent wasn't high enough, I only hope that for this final battle, your highness would be able to see things clearly and not taint the word fairness of the Dongshengshan Gate. The eyes of all the seniors here are like torches, logic is clear in their hearts." As he spoke, his silhouette slowly walked towards the center of the battle platform as he stared at the geniuses gathered here. "Your opponent is me." Gusu Tianqi walked towards him as he coldly spoke. "You aren't my opponent." Qin Wentian spoke in arrogance. He swept his gaze over everyone as he spoke, "Gusu Tianqi, Feather King, Ruthless, Qin Ta, Yi Qianchen. I hope everyone can give me a chance and come at me together." Chapter 886. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice rang out, the originally silent atmosphere turned even more silent. Even the sound of the wind could be heard clearly. Countless gazes landed on Qin Wentian, their faces were filled with shock, as though they didn't dare to believe that Qin Wentian was the one who spoke those words. The 10 chosen walked up the platform. Although they weren't as tyrannical as Gusu Tianqi and Qin Wentian, how could there be weaklings among them? If one fought alone, they might be insta-defeated by Qin Wentian. But if there were 5 of them, including Gusu Tianqi, the amplification of their attacks wouldn't be as simple as adding them together. Let's ask, if 5 of them attacked at the same time, would the effect be the same as 5 of them attacking individually? If they joined forces, the might they could unleash would be fatal. This was especially so for geniuses of this level. How terrifying would that be? It was simply unimaginable. But Qin Wentian actually said that he would give them a chance. He wanted Gusu Tianqi, Feather King, Ruthless, Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen to come at him together. Was he crazy? In order to prove his strength, in order to enter the top 3, he wanted to fight against 5 people. Are you insulting me? Gusu Tianqi coldly spoke. Wanting him to join forces with the other 4 to fight against Qin Wentian was simply ridiculous. This person was simply too arrogant. Fight against me first. Among the participants, Feather King was the most sullen one. As a young king of the winged devil race, right now, he couldn't even maintain his position within the top 5. How cruel was this to him? Ruthless, Qin Ta and Yi Qianchen, although they were all defeated by Qin Wentian, they were all staring coldly at him right now. You guys have already been defeated so miserably, yet you guys still have such laughable arrogance. Qin Wentian stepped out, turning his gaze onto the crowd. The reason why he chose to fight against the 5 of them was because Dong Xingting made things difficult for him. He could only use this method to prove himself, letting everyone witness this battle. If Dong Xingting still didn't allow him to enter the top 3, it would be equivalent to him smacking his own face. If the news of this immortal banquet at the Dongshengshan Gate were to circulate out, he would definitely become a laughingstock. In an instant, boundless battle might erupted from Qin Wentian. Brilliant light illuminated the heavens as terrifying rumbling sounds rang out. Qin Wentian's body expanded, becoming hundreds of meters tall. The others had to tilt their heads to see him. In front of them, only his feet could be seen. Boundless brilliance flowed around his body, as if he was wearing a demonic armor. A layer of blood-red brilliance bloomed on Qin Wentian's body, which was extremely demonic. In the air, boundless astral light cascaded downwards, transforming into a terrifying constellation. Demon Sovereign Astral Soul, Violet Gold Suppression Constellation. An incomparably violent gigantic demon appeared, revolving around Qin Wentian's back. It was the same size as Qin Wentian and exuded a towering demonic might, akin to a demon king from the primordial era. An intense roar thundered out, shaking the heavens and earth. After which, the roars of the other demonic beasts resounded in unison. Within the constellation, numerous terrifying gigantic demons appeared, each of them exuding a fearsome aura similar to Qin Wentian's. These demonic beasts stood in different directions, as though they wanted to envelop the entire battle platform. Gusu Tianqi and the others felt their hearts trembling when they saw this scene. This fellow, was he going all out? Was he doing this to prove his strength? Behind Qin Wentian, numerous gigantic violet golden silhouettes could be seen, resembling divinities. Terrifying runic light flowed around their bodies, and each of them radiated a fearsome pressure that permeated the air. Do you guys really think that you are very powerful? Qin Wentian swept his gaze over the five of them. On his body, there seemed to be a pure and flawless white flame circulating around him, enveloping the entire starry space. Gusu Tianqi inclined his head, staring at the 100-meter-tall giant. His aura frenziedly gushed forth as he soared up into the air, executing his battle art. His blazing furnace constellation manifested, with 9 divinities wielding long spears in their hands, standing guard behind him. Similarly, terrifying sun flames circulated around his body. However, when he stood in front of Qin Wentian, his aura was clearly weaker than before. I've already said it. The 5 of you can come at me together. If there's only one of you, you won't stand a chance at all. Qin Wentian stretched out a gigantic palm. On this palm, divine inscriptions could be seen circulating around it. The divine energy in his body was unceasingly channeled into his palm, resembling numerous ancient bells. His divine energy also contained white flames within, causing the ancient bells to transform into a pure and flawless white color. Feather King howled in rage as his aura towered up into the sky. A pair of violet gold wings appeared as he soared up into the air. The color of the sky changed as a powerful ancient devil manifested. His eyes stared at the gigantic figure before him as his battle intent towered up into the sky. Boom! It was as though there was a winged devil protecting him. An incomparably gigantic winged devil shadow appeared behind Feather King as its pair of violet gold wings blotted out the sky. There's no need for you guys to act. Gusu Tianqi roared in rage. He stepped out as the 9 divinities shot out their long spears at the same time. A destructive sun storm blasted out, wanting to melt everything. Qin Wentian directly blasted out with his palm. In an instant, an incomparably gigantic white ancient bell appeared in the air, as though it could suppress everything. This white ancient bell directly slammed into the tempest as boundless white-colored calamitous energy gushed forth. In just an instant, the tempest was completely destroyed. I've already said it. You aren't my opponent. Qin Wentian lowered his head, his gigantic eyes glanced at Gusu Tianqi, causing his countenance to turn incredibly unsightly to behold. Was this Qin Wentian's full strength? To think that he was actually so powerful. With a lift of his hand, the gigantic ancient bell actually destroyed the sun storm he unleashed. Not only for Gusu Tianqi, everyone in the immortal banquet felt their hearts trembling. The Qin Wentian at this moment was simply too powerful. Boom! Qin Ta of the heavenly god race had an extremely irascible personality. Right now, he transformed into a heavenly deity as his body expanded explosively. He roared in rage, "I really want to see how strong you are at your peak." Yi Qianqian's silhouette soared up into the air. On the battle platform, Yi Qianqian, no longer had anything to lose. His ranking might very well be the highest. In that case, what else was there for him to be concerned about? Defeat, it didn't matter. He also wanted to see how strong Qin Wendian was at this moment. The last one was ruthless. His silhouette also soared up into the air. The 5 of them surrounded Qin Wendian, each of them radiating a terrifying aura. "Let's attack together." Qin Wendian roared. Momentarily, the silhouettes all rushed out at the same time. Yi Qianqian directly slashed out with his sword, cleaving apart space, aiming for Qin Wendian's head. Ruthless spear of darkness pierced through the heavens and earth, aiming for the back of Qin Wendian's head. Qin Ta blasted out with his heavenly god fist, penetrating through the air. Feather King transformed into a winged devil. His silhouette flickered as he directly lunged towards Qin Wendian. Gusu Tianqi appeared in front of Qin Wendian. He took out a supreme sun spear from his sun furnace and stabbed it towards Qin Wendian. Roar! A violent roar shook the heavens and earth. As long as the demonic beast king protecting Qin Wendian could protect him, the demonic beasts that descended from the heavens would directly attack the 5 of them. Qin Wendian's palms slammed towards Gusu Tianqi's attack, but his eyes were staring up at the sky. Everywhere his gaze landed, the numerous violet gold figures that resembled divinities actually floated up. Boom, boom, boom. Each of the figures slammed downwards, landing in a certain location. It was as though these figures were forming a marvelous diagram. The 5 experts frenziedly attacked Qin Wendian. However, to the shock of the spectators, they discovered that they couldn't even break through Qin Wendian's defense. If Qin Wendian wanted to defeat the other 4 with the exception of Gusu Tianqi, it would be extremely easy. Even when Gusu Tianqi attacked, Qin Wendian's palms were constantly repelled. However, Qin Wendian wasn't in a hurry to act. What does he want to do? The gazes of the spectators turned to the sky. The numerous divinity-like figures gathered together to form an incomparably gigantic diagram. This diagram abruptly revolved, emitting a fearsome might. Gusu Tianqi inclined his head and stared at the sky. He could feel an incomparably great threat from the diagram. After which, he saw Qin Wendian stretching out his hands and waving them in the air. That incomparably gigantic diagram descended from the sky as numerous figures revolved frenziedly around it. The position Qin Wendian was standing at was precisely in the center of the diagram. A supreme pressure bore down on them. Gusu Tianqi and the other 4 were enveloped by the gigantic diagram, feeling a stifling pressure. They frenziedly unleashed their attacks, yet the terrifying might of the diagram seemed to have locked down their attacks, suppressing them and destroying them. The 9 figures behind Gusu Tianqi suffered an attack. Boundless light blasted over, destroying the 9 figures unceasingly. The numerous suns also stopped radiating their might as they were destroyed by the boundless light. At this moment, regardless of Gusu Tianqi or Feather King, they discovered that their bodies were being suppressed by a supreme pressure. Their movements became extremely slow. Get down. Qin Wendian glanced at Yi Qianqian. After which, a surge of suppressive energy blasted onto him, slamming him into the ground. Go. Qin Wendian turned his gaze to Qin Ta. After which, Qin Ta was flung through the air. Next, Ruthless and Feather King roared in rage, yet they were still unable to block that suppressive energy. The suppressive energy directly slammed into their bodies and could even kill them directly. However, Qin Wendian didn't mind doing this. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted everyone to see clearly, and that he didn't want Dongxing Ting to have any excuses, he wouldn't have dragged the other 4 over. To him, these 4 were of no threat at all. Is there still a need to fight? Qin Wendian turned his gaze to Gusu Tianqi. After which, the light from the diagram landed on Gusu Tianqi. At this instant, Gusu Tianqi couldn't move at all. The boundless suppressive energy blasted over, shattering all of his defenses. Qin Wendian slammed out with his palm, directly sending him flying towards the direction of the banquet. An immortal king from the eastern prefecture waved his hand and caught hold of Gusu Tianqi's body. However, his gaze was fixed on Qin Wentian. The gazes of everyone were on Qin Wentian. This was the last battle, and it was also the most shocking one. Qin Wentian single-handedly treated all the geniuses at the Dongshengshan Gate as nothing. No matter how many geniuses there were, he alone could destroy them all. Not only could he defeat them, he could even kill them if he wanted to. Qin Wentian's body was over 100 meters tall. The light radiating from him illuminated the skies, as though he was the true supreme character of this immortal banquet. When he stared at Dongxing Ting, he spoke. Is this enough? Chapter 887. Do you think this is enough? Qin Wentian's voice rang out in this space. Staring at that 100-meter tall figure, all the immortal kings were speechless. If this was the case, could Dongxing Ting still say that he wouldn't allow Qin Wentian to enter the top 3? Before this, Dongxing Ting once said that the reason why he allowed Jun Mengchen to enter the top 3 and not Qin Wentian, was because Jun Mengchen had displayed shocking talent while Qin Wentian's performance wasn't stunning enough. In that case, Qin Wentian's performance was undoubtedly telling everyone that he too, could also dazzle the heavens, causing the entire immortal banquet to be in awe. Gusu Tianqi, the top ranker of the Eastern Prefecture, with a single disciple for 9 generations, each generation had produced immortal kings. However, Qin Wentian domineeringly defeated him. Not only so, even if the other 4 participants of the top 10 were added in, not a single one of them could withstand an attack from Qin Wentian. What else was there to prove? Qin Wentian alone could disregard half of the 10 participants of the immortal banquet, defeating all of them, including Gusu Tianqi, who was the most popular. A total of 10 participants, he defeated 5. If Dongxing Ting still didn't allow him to enter the top 3, it would truly be smacking his own face. This was clearly unfair, and this grand event of the Dongshengshan Gate that only happens once every 100 years would also be covered in dust and dirt, losing all meaning to it. Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen, these 2 fellow apprentices, truly exudes magnificence through the generations. The hearts of the spectators mused. The idol cloud immortal king was also stunned, staring at Qin Wentian on the battle platform as a strange expression appeared on his face. Were the top 2 rankers of the top 3 going to be taken down by the geniuses of his cloud prefecture? The expressions of the experts from the other major powers of the cloud prefecture stiffened, they didn't know what to feel in their hearts. Qin Wentian had a grudge against them, and they even mocked Qin Wentian for not being able to be ranked at the top. But now it seems that Qin Wentian's radiance was no longer limited to the cloud prefecture. Even among the geniuses of the 13 prefectures, he was the most dazzling. What could Gu Zhantian be compared to him? At this moment, Gu Zhantian, Zhou Yu, and the others no longer knew what they were feeling in their hearts. They didn't even have the qualifications to enter the top 10. What was even more laughable was that Gu Zhantian had once provoked Qin Wentian. But from the looks of it now, given his talent, he wasn't even qualified to carry Qin Wentian's shoes. The gap between them was insurmountable. It turned out that in the previous battles, Qin Wentian had never used his full strength. It was not until this moment that he truly unleashed his strongest power. This was the most perfect him, the most powerful him. Princess Lioli turned her gaze onto Qin Wentian before shifting her gaze onto Jun Mengchen. The talent of these 2 could be considered unparalleled in the 13 prefectures. In that case, if they were placed in other locations in the immortal realms, they would also be geniuses who stood at the peak. There was a possibility that her father, the White Emperor, had predicted this. However, who was it? She turned her gaze onto Dongxing Ting. Before this, Dongxing Ting had intentionally targeted Qin Wentian. Although he had explained it, it was still a little forced. Now, what should he decide? Many thoughts flashed through Dongxing Ting's mind. If right now, he still didn't allow Qin Wentian to enter the top 3, it would undoubtedly mean that he was denying the words he said not long ago and was clearly targeting Qin Wentian. In that case, would he really allow Qin Wentian to enter the top 3 and become the sage child of the Dongshengshan Gate, the personal disciple of her father? Qin Wentian, would he do something shocking and damage the reputation of the Dongshengshan Gate? If this young man wishes to pursue Qing, he would definitely need an extraordinary identity. Since he is in the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures, becoming the personal disciple of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor is undoubtedly the best choice. If not, if he were to rely on himself, even if he wanted to leave the 13 prefectures, he would have to spend an extremely long time. By the time he truly came into contact with the upper echelons of the Evergreen Kingdom, it would have already been countless years. If he is smart enough, he should know what to do. Dongxing Ting silently mused. Why not temporarily give Qin Wendian a chance? As for how he would treat him in the future, that was still up to him. As he thought of this, a smile flickered in Dongxing Ting's eyes. He stood up and slowly spoke, being able to witness the shocking talents of the various geniuses. This is the fortune of my Dongshengshan Gate. Qin Wendian, I've said it before, I won't intentionally target you. This time around, the combat prowess you displayed can only be described as breathtaking. In this round, you didn't lose a single battle. In this round, you are the first ranker. In addition, although you were the last ranker in the first round, you still managed to enter the top 3 in the second round. You aren't inferior to your junior apprentice brother Jun Mengchen. In that case, the rankings of the two of you will truly make things difficult for me. Dongxing Ting had a relaxed smile on his face. It was as though a single glance from him was sufficient to ease the tension in the air. It was as though he had never intentionally targeted anyone before. In addition, that last sentence of his was undoubtedly an official announcement that Qin Wendian had entered the top 3. Dongxing Ting said that the rankings of Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen made things difficult for him. But earlier, he also said that he would rank Jun Mengchen as the first ranker. This meant that Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen would be the top 2 rankers of this immortal banquet. First and second rankers. Ha ha ha. The Idle Cloud Immortal King laughed happily. The first and second rankers both originated from his Cloud Prefecture. However, the countenance of the Deep Flame Immortal King was extremely gloomy. His disciple Black Peak was killed by Qin Wendian on the battle platform. And now, Qin Wendian still managed to break through the restrictions of the rules and entered the top 3. Even if Dongxing Ting wanted to stop Qin Wendian, he wouldn't be able to do so. The Deep Flame Immortal King's eyes flashed with coldness as he laughed coldly in his heart. He was very clear about Dongxing Ting's personality. Dongxing Ting's will was extremely resolute and he had a strong personality. He could allow Qin Wendian to enter the top 3, but in the future, after Qin Wendian takes the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor as his master, it would be impossible for him to rise up to the heavens. The days for Qin Wendian were still very long. At this moment, I shall officially announce the top 10 rankers of the once-a-100-year grand banquet held by the Dongshengshan Gate. Dongxing Ting's voice rang out. The azure dragon in the air howled in rage as the soldiers around the battle platform pointed their spears at the sky and roared in unison, their voices shaking the heavens and earth as their might towered up into the sky. Even those in the immortal banquet all stood up, expressing how important this moment was. Ranked number 10, Yi Qianqian. Dongxing Ting called out. Yi Qianqian's countenance was incomparably calm, there was no hint of complacency in him at all. Ranked number 9, Qin Ta. Dongxing Ting continued. Qin Ta's countenance was also extremely calm. Ranked number 8, Ruthless. Ranked number 7, Mo1. Ranked number 6, Zi Qingxian. Ranked number 5, Feather King. The spectators all sighed when they heard the rankings. Although Zi Qingxian defeated Feather King, her ranking was still placed behind him. Evidently, Dongxing Ting decided to place both Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen into the top 3. As for Zi Qingxian, there was no need for her to take care of her and nobody would say anything about it. Naturally, Zi Qingxian didn't really care if she didn't enter the top 3. Ranked number 4, Hua Taishu. Dongxing Ting's voice rang out, his words causing the spectators to tremble. Qin Wendian ultimately managed to enter the top 3. However, Dongxing Ting placed Hua Taishu at number 4 and Gusu Tianqi into the top 3. His meaning was very clear. Before this, it didn't matter because both Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu wanted to enter the top 3. But now, only one of them could enter the top 3. Since Hua Taishu had no intention of taking the Dongxing Heaven Emperor as his master, Gusu Tianqi had to exit the top 3. As for Gusu Tianqi, his royal father, the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, wanted to accept him as a disciple. How could Gusu Tianqi be one of the top 3 rankers? Hence, Dongxing Ting saved a spot for him while Hua Taishu was eliminated. The rankings of the two of them were already disputed. For the first 2 rounds, they were evenly matched. But for the 3rd round, Hua Taishu only fought a single battle and didn't fight against Gusu Tianqi. The two of them specialized in different aspects and it was hard to compare them. No matter who Dongxing Ting placed first, he would still be biased. Evidently, Dongxing Ting had already made his decision and placed Gusu Tianqi into the top 3. For this point, no one would say anything. Because even Hua Taishu himself didn't want to fight for the top 3 positions. Number 3, Gusu Tianqi. Dongxing Ting finally announced the top 3 rankings. The moment his name was announced, everything seemed to be settled. Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen had already locked onto the top 2 positions. Number 2, Jun Mengchen. Dongxing Ting spoke again. As the sound of his voice faded, the gazes of everyone turned to Qin Wendian. Dongxing Ting placed him in the top 3. Qin Wendian is the top ranker of this batch of trials. Dongxing Ting had a smile on his face. The immortal kings all applauded, congratulating the top rankers. Congratulations. Your Majesty can finally accept 3 more disciples. Congratulations as well. Senior immortal kings, please return to your seats. The 10 of you can return to your seats as well. Dongxing Ting waved his hands as he smiled, exuding an incomparably carefree aura. After that, everyone returned to their seats. In the direction of the Cloud Prefecture, the Idle Cloud Immortal King stood there to welcome the return of Qin Wendian and the other 2. Mu Yan also raised his wine cup to congratulate Qin Wendian and the other 2. Who would have thought that during the battle in the Drift Snow City, Qin Wendian's brilliance was extremely dazzling. But even so, he didn't expect that Qin Wendian would be able to stand at the peak of the Dongshengshan Gate. Qin Wendian and the other 2 exchanged glances. After that, Qin Wendian patted Zi Qingxian on her shoulder, consoling her. Come, everyone, let's drink and celebrate the conclusion of this grand banquet. Dongxing Ting seemed to be very happy. He didn't feel the slightest bit of unhappiness at the fact that Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen obtained the top 2 positions. Your Highness, the curtains haven't been drawn yet. It's about time for the treasures to be brought out. Jun Mengchen heartily spoke, as though he was worried that if he rejected Dongxing Ting, he wouldn't be able to obtain the treasures. Yeah, for the top 10 and top 3 rankers, there will be different rewards. Dongxing Ting spoke in a heroic manner. After that, 10 beautiful maidens walked down from the platform, each holding a different treasure in their hands as they walked towards the top 10 rankers. The treasures that the crowd paid the most attention to were naturally the treasures of the top 3 rankers. Gusu Tianqi was a flying-type immortal treasure. When the maiden took it out from her interspatial ring, an incomparably resplendent flying boat appeared before the eyes of everyone. This is an immortal king boat. Dongxing Ting smiled. Gusu Tianqi stood up and accepted the boat. In the direction of the Cloud Prefecture, there were 2 treasures displayed. One of them was an immortal rampart, the Paragon Immortal Rampart. Boundless immortal light radiated from it, causing the hearts of those from the Cloud Prefecture to be filled with desire. As for the other treasure, it was a gigantic rune bone belonging to a paragon sky rock. On the surface of the rune bone, mysterious runic inscriptions could be seen circulating around it as an incomparably terrifying shadow of a sky rock appeared there. It was like a paragon sky rock, able to roar high up in the 9 heavens. Many thanks to your highness. Jun Mengchen's lips curled into a smile as he kept the immortal rampart. Many thanks to your highness. Qin Wendian also had a profound smile on his face as he kept the rune bone. Chapter 888. Jun Mengchen laughed happily. 2 out of the 3 of them had already completed the mission of the Heavenly Talisman Realm. Right now, the rewards of the Dongshengshan Gate were already in his hands. When they return, they would also be rewarded by the Heavenly Talisman Realm. Such a good thing, how could he not be happy? In addition, he also understood that his senior brother Qin had a relationship with the Dongxing Heaven Emperor and was once abandoned by the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. This was why the Deep Flame Immortal King and Dongxing Ting wanted to make things difficult for his senior brother Qin, even implicating him and Zi Qingxian. This caused him to be filled with anticipation. Since they abandoned his senior brother Qin before, they should let the Dongxing Heaven Emperor experience the same feeling. As he thought of this, the smile on Jun Mengchen's face grew even more radiant. He lifted his wine cup and drained it in a single gulp. At this moment, Dongxing Ting's gaze was still on Jun Mengchen. When he saw the radiant smile on Jun Mengchen's face, his mood wasn't bad at all. Jun Mengchen and Qin Wentian both became part of the top 3. In this case, they should be satisfied, right? He would slowly train them in the future. The immortal banquet this time around can already be considered perfect. Let me toast the various elders and geniuses once more. Dongxing Ting raised his cup again as he smiled. And also to all the friends who came here to spectate. Come, let's toast together. An immortal king laughed. It's just that we are still a step away from perfection. Let me first congratulate His Majesty for accepting 3 more outstanding disciples, and also congratulate the Dongshengshan Gate for gaining more geniuses. Another immortal king laughed, causing the other immortal kings to laugh as well. Right, congratulations to His Majesty in advance. Everyone happily drank their wine. It was like the matter of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor accepting disciples had already been confirmed. The 3 of them would soon become the disciples of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Because from their perspective, this immortal banquet, fame, treasures, everything else paled in comparison to becoming the personal disciple of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. This was what these geniuses yearned for the most. Didn't they come here because they wanted to become the personal disciple of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor? How vast was the immortal realms, how many experts were there? Geniuses were as common as the clouds and there was no lack of supreme characters. However, what did the immortal realms lack the most? A top-notch expert. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor, the Emperor of the Eastern Sage 13 Prefectures, the controller of the entire 13 prefectures. How terrifying was his authority! Acknowledging the Dongxing Heaven Emperor as one's master would instantly elevate one's status and identity to a whole new level. To countless people, it could be said that they had truly soared to the heavens in a single bound. In the future, the resources, treasures, and the level of contact they had with them would all undergo a complete transformation. No one had ever thought of rejecting such an honor. In fact, such a thought didn't even cross their minds. Even for Dongxing Ting, this thought only flashed past his mind. Hence, he was on guard against Qin Wentian. But after thinking about it, he himself had already given up on this idea. His father, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, was the ruler of the 13 prefectures. Little fellow, you better cherish this opportunity well. At this moment, there were even immortal kings who raised their wine cups to Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen. Young and arrogant. These 2 little fellows are much more arrogant compared to me when I was young. However, only characters like them are qualified to become His Majesty's disciple. At the immortal banquet, the focus of everyone was now on Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen. Although Dongxing Ting had said that the immortal banquet could be considered perfect, they understood that the main event has yet to come. His Majesty accepting a disciple was the perfect ending to this once-in-100 years event. Brother Qin. At this moment, someone called out to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian turned his gaze over only to see that the person who called out was none other than Zhou Yu. His brows furrowed as his countenance turned cold. Only to see Zhou Yu raising his wine cup to Qin Wentian as he smiled, Brother Qin, Zhou Yu, hereby apologize for the unhappiness that occurred earlier. I will punish myself by drinking 3 cups of wine as punishment. I hope that Brother Qin won't blame me. Right now, the gazes of everyone were on Qin Wentian. He was already destined to be the disciple of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor and the future sage child of the Dongshengshan Gate. As long as he matures, his authority would definitely rise up to the heavens. And given Qin Wentian's talent, in addition to the guidance of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, as well as the nurturing of the Dongshengshan Gate, it was impossible for him not to be powerful even if he didn't want to. And before this, Zhou Yu had an intense conflict with Qin Wentian. But that was because he didn't expect that Qin Wentian would be able to reach this step. Even the Deep Flame Immortal King personally came over to deny it, yet Qin Wentian managed to do it. And Zhou Yu evidently wasn't willing to make an enemy out of a character who might have great authority in the 13 prefectures in the future. The Battle Heaven's immortal manor was also unwilling. Hence, they sent Zhou Yu to apologize first. Scram! Qin Wentian spat out. In an instant, Zhou Yu's countenance turned ashen as the smile on his face froze. Although he didn't manage to enter the top 10, he was still a heaven's chosen whose name could shake an entire region. He was prideful in his heart and was hot-blooded in his youth. Taking the initiative to apologize only to be told to scram. The countenances of the experts from the Dongshengshan Gate all turned unsightly. Seems like Qin Wentian had no intentions of reconciling. When the other major powers saw this scene, they all gave up on the thought of going up to apologize. Initially, they wanted to reconcile with Qin Wentian, but now, they understood that it was impossible. Zhou Yu stared coldly at the departing back of Qin Wentian. After that, he drank the wine in his cup and with a clench of his fist, the wine cup shattered into pieces. However, he didn't say anything. Qin Wentian completely ignored Zhou Yu. To him, there was no way he would take Eastern Sage as his master. Naturally, even if he grew stronger in the future, he wouldn't purposely go to the Drifts Now city to take revenge on those major powers. After all, although those people wanted to deal with him, it was also a form of tempering for him. He wouldn't be so bored as to purposely take revenge on them. However, Zhou Yu had violated Qin Wentian's taboos. Before this, when Jun Mengchen was poisoned, Zhou Yu cursed him. If he apologized, would Qin Wentian reconcile with him and call him brother? This would only cause Qin Wentian to feel disgust in his heart. Some experts from the major powers of the Eastern Prefecture also came over, toasting to Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen, intending to befriend them. The Dongshengshan Gate was located in the Eastern Prefecture. The disciples of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, as well as the sage child characters of the Dongshengshan Gate, were naturally extremely valuable to them. Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen didn't reject anyone. They didn't speak much and just quietly drank their wine. At this moment, a lithe and graceful silhouette walked towards Qin Wentian. Momentarily, the gazes of many experts were attracted to her. In fact, many of the experts from the Dongshengshan Gate had a hint of wariness in their eyes. This person who was walking towards Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen was none other than Princess Liuli. The Idol Cloud Immortal King stood up and personally welcomed them. He smiled. Princess Liuli's name, although Idol Cloud is in the Cloud Prefecture, I've also heard of it. Senior is too polite. Princess Liuli smiled. After all, these were all immortal kings. She naturally had to show the proper etiquette. Let me toast to the two of them. Princess Liuli stared at Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen as she spoke. The matter her father entrusted to her was extremely important and there was a high possibility that it was related to these two. Hence, she personally came over. The Idol Cloud Immortal King nodded. He then turned to Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen and introduced, Qin Wentian, Jun Mengchen, this is the daughter of the White Emperor of the Evergreen Kingdom, Princess Liuli. The Chongqing the Great also treats Princess Liuli as his own. Qin Wentian's body trembled violently. He stared at Princess Liuli as a dazzling light flashed in his eyes. He instantly stood up and stared at Princess Liuli. The princess of the Evergreen Kingdom, Qing. Wasn't she none other than the princess of the Evergreen Kingdom, the daughter of the Chongqing the Great? The Princess Liuli in front of him actually came from the Evergreen Kingdom and was also a princess of the Evergreen Kingdom. Princess Liuli had a strange expression on her face when she saw Qin Wentian staring at her. There had never been a man who dared to stare at her in such a manner before. She couldn't help but to feel somewhat unhappy. You should be acquainted with Qing, right? At this moment, Qin Wentian's voice rang out, causing Princess Liuli's eyes to flash with sharpness. She stared at Qin Wentian, as though waiting for him to continue speaking. Princess, if you meet Qing, on this trip back to the Immortal Empire, help me pass on a message to her. I will definitely look for her. Qin Wentian continued. Dong Xingting's eyes flashed with coldness when he saw this. What relationship do you have with Qing? Princess Liuli stared at Qin Wentian. You will know in a while. Qin Wentian spoke. Princess Liuli furrowed her brows. This young man seemed to be keeping her in suspense. However, if Qin Wentian really had a relationship with Qing, the person her father was looking for might very well be this young man who could affect the fate of the Immortal Empire. I'll be waiting. Princess Liuli slowly walked back, not saying anything more. The atmosphere at the Immortal Banquet was as intense as ever. At this moment, a beam of light shot over from afar. At this instant, the experts of the Dongshengshan Gate, including Dong Xingting, all stood up and stared in that direction. The light was resplendent, and a figure appeared in the beam of light. The moment he appeared, it was as if the entire world revolved around him. We pay our respects to your majesty. Many immortal kings bowed. The Immortal Foundation soldiers and serving girls all knelt on one knee, incomparably respectful. The person who just appeared was none other than the totem of the Dongshengshan Gate, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Father! Dong Xingting happily called out, relinquishing the main seat to his father. Everyone, please take a seat, there's no need to be so polite. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor didn't put on any airs at all. With a single step, he walked over to Dong Xingting's seat and sat down. He glanced at Princess Liuli as he smiled. The daughter of the White Emperor is truly a heaven chosen. Senior praises me too much. Princess Liuli politely replied. My father often mentions senior to junior. When we return, I'll send my regards to your father and that fellow Evergreen. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor was amiable and approachable, as though he was talking to a junior of the younger generation. His gaze turned over as he smiled. Although I didn't attend the Immortal Banquet, I already know what happened. For the geniuses who came here today, they can all join my Dongshengshan Gate and become a core disciple. For the top 3 rankers, stand up and let me take a look. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor smiled. Gusu Tianqi, Jun Mengchen and Qin Wentian respectively stood up. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor didn't have a strange expression on his face when he saw Qin Wentian. It was like this was the first time he met Qin Wentian. He only smiled and asked, I once promised that for those who can enter the top 3, they can all join my sect. The 3 of you have outstanding talent and it's already very rare for you to be able to reach this step. Today, are you willing to join my sect? Junior is willing. Gusu Tianqi stated. His elders were all extremely powerful but none of them could be compared to the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. He naturally wouldn't miss out on such an opportunity. What about the 2 of you? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor smiled and nodded as he stared at Jun Mengchen and Qin Wentian. The immortal kings all had casual smiles on their faces as they stared at them, praising them unceasingly. These 3 fellows were about to enter the sect of an immortal emperor. Why would His Majesty need to ask so much? This Jun Mengchen's talent is extraordinary, His Majesty would surely like him. Someone at the side laughed in a low voice. Junior came to participate in this immortal banquet only to temper myself. I have no intention of taking a master. I can only disappoint senior's kind intentions. Jun Mengchen spoke. The sounds of laughter and whispers in the surroundings abruptly stopped at this instant. There was no warning at all, not even a peep could be heard from the crowd. Time, at this moment, seemed to have stopped. However, at this moment, Qin Wentian's voice rang out, Junior's aptitude is low, I'm not worthy to be your Majesty's disciple. Chapter 889. Qin Wentian's voice rang out in the silence. How clear was it? Although his voice wasn't loud, it caused the hearts of everyone present to tremble as expressions of disbelief appeared on their faces. In fact, there was even a hint of terror in their eyes. Time stopped once again. Even the sound of breathing ceased to exist. The spectators held their breaths as they stared at Jun Mengchen and Qin Wentian, finding it hard to accept this shocking truth. For the 100-year grand event of the Eastern Sage Immortal Sect, at the very end, the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor appeared and accepted 3 new disciples. This should have been the most exciting moment, but now, it has become the most shocking moment. Even for those immortal kings, they all felt a sense of panic in their hearts. What sort of characters were immortal kings? They were all at the celestial phenomenon realm. Even if they were supreme geniuses, there was no need for them to care. But why were they panicking? Because at this moment, the moment the Dongxing Heaven Emperor personally arrived, the moment this grand occasion came to a perfect conclusion, the top 2 of the Immortal Banquet, as well as the first and second rankers, all rejected the Dongxing Heaven Emperor at the same time. Although Jun Mengchen and Qin Wentian's words were tactful, their tone and expressions were so resolute and emotionless. It was as though this moment was already destined. Since they obtained the top 3 positions, this shocking scene was destined to happen. There were many supreme experts here, none of them were fools. Which one of them wasn't an experienced individual? How could they not tell that Jun Mengchen and Qin Wentian already had their own thoughts in their hearts? Even if they obtained the top 3 positions, they wouldn't take Qin Wentian as their master. Instead, they would reject him without any hesitation. That paragon of the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures, the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, appeared in the most dazzling manner, personally appearing here to complete the final segment of this grand event. It was as though he was the center of attention, appearing there just like that, yet he was directly rejected by the first and second rankers. Wasn't this a slap to the face of the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor? There were actually people in the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures who dared to do such a thing. Not only that, the 2 of them were celestial phenomenon ascendants. In the void, it was silent for a long time. The experts didn't dare to breathe too loudly. They still hadn't digested this fact. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor's invitation to become his disciple was rejected. Moreover, it was rejected by the 2 strongest people who came to attend the Dongshengshan Gate banquet. This was something that had never happened before. Even Princess Glaze was shocked. Her beautiful eyes flickered, she also didn't expect such a shocking thing to happen. Her beautiful eyes swept over everyone, only to see Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen had incomparably resolute expressions on their faces. As for the others, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. It was as though they were waiting for the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor to speak. In the Cloud Prefecture, the idol Cloud Immortal King's sense of glory had completely vanished. In fact, he even felt a trace of panic as he stared in shock at the 2 of them. Have they gone mad? Impudent! Finally, a berating voice resounded in the silent space. It seemed so cold, and it even faintly carried a murderous aura. The person who spoke was none other than Dongxing Ting. He had once thought of this possibility, but he rejected it. But at this moment, when he personally witnessed it, an intense coldness gushed forth from his heart. Qin Wentian, did he come here for revenge? He actually dared to protect the Dongxing Heaven Emperor in front of so many people? The overlord of the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures? Jun Mengchen, do you know what you are doing? I gave you such a chance, but you actually chose to give it up. Dongxing Ting stared at Jun Mengchen. As for Qin Wentian, he had already sent him to the death row. His eyes were filled with killing intent when he stared at Qin Wentian. With regards to Jun Mengchen, he still had a sliver of hope that Qin Wentian would be able to influence him and give him another chance. My royal father, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, is the controller of the 13 prefectures. Your talent is outstanding, and now that my royal father has accepted you as a disciple, your name can shake the world. If you take back your words earlier, I can plead for mercy on your behalf to my royal father. Dongxing Ting stared at Jun Mengchen as he spoke. Jun Mengchen similarly stared at Dongxing Ting. Although he had a carefree attitude and had a frivolous attitude, when it came to matters of principle, he was clearer than anyone else. He was a disciple of the heavenly talisman realm and was brought here by his senior brother to temper himself. To him, this was merely a test, a mission. It was impossible for him, Jun Mengchen, to become the disciple of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. In addition, given the grudge between the Dongshengshan Gate and his senior brother, it was also impossible for him to enter the Dongxing Heaven Emperor's tutelage. I came here to participate in the Dongshengshan Gate's grand event, starting from the Cloud Prefecture. All the way until now, it was indeed because I wanted to temper myself and grow stronger. I have no intentions of taking a master. Jun Mengchen stared at Dong Xingting as he resolutely continued. In addition, the reason why the Dongshengshan Gate organized this grand event was that the top 3 rankers would have the qualifications to become the disciple of the immortal emperor. However, this is a two-way choice. I've never heard that the immortal emperor must be my master. If not, I wouldn't have come here today. Upon hearing Jun Mengchen's words, the spectators were all speechless. From ancient times until now, the grand event of the Dongshengshan Gate that was held once every 100 years had long followed the rules. The top 3 rankers with the highest talent would naturally become the disciples of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. This was already a matter of course. There had never been a situation like today where 2 people rejected. Rejecting the Dongxing Heaven Emperor in such an occasion, wasn't this simply making things difficult for the immortal emperor? There had never been anyone who dared to make things difficult for the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. This was the first time someone did so. Dongxing Ting still wanted to speak, only to hear the Dongxing Heaven Emperor calmly interjecting, "Shut up." Dongxing Ting halted when he heard this. He glanced at his father only to see that the expression on the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor's face was as calm as ever. His eyes were so deep that no emotions could be seen, be it joy or anger. However, the faint smile on his face had already vanished, replaced by a solemn expression. There was no need to doubt that the Dongxing Heaven Emperor would definitely be angered now. He was the immortal emperor, an immortal king character. How could he not be angry when his face was slapped by 2 juniors in public? "Everyone, sit down." The Dongxing Heaven Emperor spoke. What status did he have? Even if he was angered in his heart, he wouldn't reveal any of it. Everyone respectively sat down, but the atmosphere was still extremely heavy. Nobody spoke. "You guys are fellow apprentices. Which sect did you join? Who is your master?" The Dongxing Heaven Emperor sat there, staring at Qin Wentian as he asked. His eyes seemed to be able to see through Qin Wentian. Just a single gaze actually caused Qin Wentian to feel a terrifying pressure. That voice rang out in his ears. It was like the voice of the great Tao, pressing down on his mental state, wanting him to obediently tell the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. A surge of aura gushed forth from Qin Wentian. His blood was seething as he stared at the terrifying eyes of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Clearly, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor didn't release any aura, yet it was still so terrifying. This was the disparity between their cultivation bases. "Your Majesty, there's no need for you to worry about this." Qin Wentian still maintained his politeness. No matter what he was thinking in his heart, before he had sufficient strength, he still had to maintain the proper etiquette when facing immortal emperors. Naturally, he wouldn't bow and scrape. He still had his own principles, and he had his own pride. "Is it because of the matter back then? You intentionally came here to humiliate me?" The Dongxing Heaven Emperor calmly spoke, as though he was talking about an extremely ordinary matter. Such an aura made Qin Wentian involuntarily admire him. "Back then, I should have taken your Majesty as my master. But after that, your Majesty requested that I only have freedom once every 1,000 years. Junior begged your Majesty to retract that order, and in exchange, I was abandoned by your Majesty due to my poor character. Maybe to your Majesty, this is just an insignificant matter. Because in your Majesty's eyes, I'm insignificant. Even if you trample on my dignity, it's nothing more than an insignificant matter. In fact, there's a high possibility that your Majesty would forget about this matter the moment you turn around." Qin Wentian laughed. He then continued, the matter back then, as well as the words of His Highness Dongxing Ting, in addition to the fact that K Tianyi doesn't have any time restrictions, this junior can also guess that the matter back then isn't as simple as I thought it to be. Maybe, Your Majesty is intentionally making things difficult for me. Audacious. Dongxing Ting stepped out as his killing intent gushed forth. Let him speak. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor spoke. Dongxing Ting could only halt his steps, but his eyes were still cold as he stared at Qin Wentian. This time around, when I came to participate in the immortal banquet of the Dongshengshan Gate, I was once again targeted and made things difficult for myself. During the first round, the Dream Demon King extracted my memories. How could I not resist? Naturally, I was ranked last. During the second round, the Devil Statue also had its own consciousness and directly destroyed my will. But even so, I still used my own strength to prove that I'm capable, walking all the way to this step and obtaining the first position. Qin Wentian stared at the Dongxing Heaven Emperor as he continued, under such circumstances, does Your Majesty think that I would still enter the Dongshengshan Gate? After I enter the immortal sect, how would I know what kind of treatment I would encounter? At that time, with just a single reason from His Highness, Dongxing Ting, would be able to consign me to eternal damnation. I came here for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's to temper myself. Secondly, it's to tell Your Majesty that not everyone is willing to take you as their master. Even if I don't take you as my master, I can still sweep through the geniuses of the 13 prefectures. I can similarly sweep through all the geniuses of the Dongshengshan Gate. Minor characters also have their own strength of character. Their dignity isn't something that can be trampled on so easily. Qin Wentian's voice rang out. His gaze then turned to the Deep Flame Immortal King as he continued, earlier, the Deep Flame Immortal King hinted to me that some endings are already destined. However, I've also replied to the Deep Flame Immortal King. For some things, you will never know what the ending will be until the end. Now, Deep Flame Immortal King, do you understand the ending? The Deep Flame Immortal King's countenance turned heavy, only to see the Dongxing Heaven Emperor calmly replying, marvelous. Qin Wentian turned his gaze onto the Deep Flame Immortal Emperor again only to see the latter calmly staring at him. His imposing eyes were still filled with a powerful might as he spoke, marvelous, very impressive. However, are you not afraid that I will kill you? As the sound of his voice faded, an even more stifling pressure enveloped Qin Wentian. It felt like as long as the Dongxing Heaven Emperor willed it, he would be able to take his life away. Back then, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor accepted the request of the Changqing the Great and went to a particle world to accept a disciple. He should naturally know that Qing was giving me a chance. However, Your Majesty intentionally targeted me, not being loyal to the Great. Now, I merely refuse to take you as my master, yet Your Majesty wants to kill me? Aren't you afraid of being ridiculed by the world? Qin Wentian arrogantly spoke. Princess Liuli's beautiful eyes flashed, she seemed to understand the meaning behind Qin Wentian's words earlier. This should be what Qin Wentian wanted to tell her. Chapter 890. Before this, Princess Liuli asked Qin Wentian what was the relationship between Qing'er and Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian told her that she would know in a while. And now, Qin Wentian said that Qing'er actually got her father, Changqing the Great, to ask the Dongxing Heaven Emperor to accept Qin Wentian as his disciple. From this, one could very well imagine how close their relationship was. When Changqing the Great fought for the throne, he placed the young Qing'er in his particle world. This was something that Princess Liuli naturally knew about. At this moment, it was very easy for her to guess that Qin Wentian and Qing'er might have an extraordinary relationship. For example, they might be lovers. In that case, the person her father, the White Emperor, predicted should be this man. Given his relationship with Qing'er, in addition to his tyrannical talent, it was very possible that he would be able to influence the fate of the Evergreen Kingdom in the future. To think that after participating in the Dongshengshan Gate's immortal banquet, I would actually find the person I wanted to find. However, the situation he is in now is somewhat awkward. Princess Liuli's beautiful eyes stared at Qin Wentian. This fellow rejected the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, smacking his face in public. Leaving aside the fact that the Dongxing Heaven Emperor was the overlord of the 13 prefectures, even ordinary Immortal Foundation characters wouldn't be able to endure this. Although the Dongshengshan Gate didn't state that the top 3 rankers of the Immortal Banquet would have to take on the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor as their master, but this was the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures, the Dongshengshan Gate was a place governed by rules. You came here to participate in the Dongshengshan Gate's Immortal Banquet and obtained the treasures of the top 3 rankers only to suddenly fall out with them. Princess Lioli didn't know what Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen were thinking. Could it be that they were so naive to think that the Dongshengshan Gate would allow them to leave so easily? Even if the Dongxing Heaven Emperor appeared to be magnanimous on the surface, could the two of them really walk out of East Immortal City alive? An Immortal Foundation expert could easily kill them. As for an immortal king, they wouldn't even know how they died, leaving no traces at all. For example, the Nightmare Immortal King who had always been sleeping. He could even seize the souls and lives of others in his dreams. It was simply too easy for him to kill Qin Wendian and Qin Wendian. The space was still silent. Was Qin Wendian provoking Dongxing Heaven Emperor in public? Courting death. Zhou Yu and the cultivators from the Immortal Palace of War Kings thought to themselves. Their eyes flashed with coldness. Before this, they were worried that Qin Wendian would soar into the sky. But now, it seemed that their worries were groundless. Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen were too arrogant. They didn't know who they were simply seeking death. Mocked by the world. The Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor stared at Qin Wendian as he spoke. I naturally won't kill you guys. However, I have reason to believe that with your talent, there's no need for you to place your hopes on my benevolence. Since you guys are fellow apprentices, can you tell me who your master is? Is he strong enough for me, Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor, to let you guys go? The Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor stared at Qin Wendian as he spoke. Qin Wendian stared at the deep eyes of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, it was as though he could see right through him. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor's judgment was very accurate. He and Jun Mengchen naturally understood what they were doing. From the perspective of ordinary people, this would definitely be courting death. If it wasn't for the fact that this was a mission from the Heavenly Talisman realm, they definitely wouldn't have thought of doing this. As for their backing, it was naturally none other than the Heavenly Talisman realm. Since the powerful Heavenly Talisman realm had issued this mission, they couldn't possibly allow them to die at the Dongshengshan Gate, right? Bai Wuya was currently seated right beside the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Even the Dongxing Heaven Emperor didn't know of his true identity. He was none other than the senior apprentice brother of Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen. There will naturally be people coming to receive us later. At this moment, a voice drifted into the ears of Qin Wendian and the others, causing Qin Wendian and the others to feel a sense of certainty in their hearts. The owner of this voice was none other than Bai Wuya. This was just as they had expected. Since the Heavenly Talisman realm had arranged this mission, they naturally wouldn't allow them to die at the Dongshengshan Gate. Since this was the case, there was nothing for them to fear. Staring at the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, Qin Wendian felt even more ridiculous as he laughed out loud. What a good Dongshengshan Gate, a grand event that happens once every 100 years. But in the end, who would have thought that it would be so dirty? Me and junior apprentice brother Mengchen obtained the top 3 rankings, yet they refused to leave without acknowledging me as their master. Your Majesty is so magnanimous, how would the people of the world view us? Qin Wendian continued. You are too impudent. The deep flame Immortal King's eyes were like the abyss, exuding a terrifying sense of danger. A stifling pressure directly bore down on Qin Wendian. This time around, the deep flame Immortal King unleashed a corporeal pressure. With a thunderous boom, Qin Wendian's body was bent over from the pressure, as though he was about to kneel on the ground. Qin Wendian hunched his back, enduring the pressure from the Deep Flame Immortal King as he coldly spoke, Deep Flame Immortal King, earlier you were so arrogant and domineering, constantly humiliating me. But in the end, your useless disciple Blackpeak was killed by me and the top ranker of the Immortal Banquet was also seized by me. Don't you feel any shame for your words? Right now, you actually flew into a rage out of humiliation? How laughable. Boom! A terrifying pressure directly blasted onto Qin Wentian, causing Qin Wentian's body to collapse, directly sprawling onto the ground. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor only watched on quietly, not interfering with the Deep Flame Immortal King at all. I said before that I won't kill you. But I have to know exactly who gave you all the guts to provoke me. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor arrogantly spoke. Shameless. Jun Mengchen stared at Qin Wentian being crushed under the pressure. An expression of rage flashed on his face as he spoke. The Dongshengshan Gate actually treats the top 3 rankers like this? How shameless. How dare you? Yet another towering pressure bore down. With a booming sound, Jun Mengchen's body was also crushed as he sprawled onto the ground together with Qin Wentian. His Highness regards you highly, yet you all harbor malicious intentions in your hearts, intentionally challenging His Majesty's prestige. Such a crime is sufficient to sentence you all to death. There's no need for a reason to kill you all. The Deep Flame Immortal King coldly spoke as his killing intent gushed forth. Isn't it a little inappropriate for the Dongshengshan Gate to act this way? At this moment, Princess Liuli faintly spoke. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor's brows twitched, while Dongxing Ting who was beside him directly turned his gaze onto Princess Liuli. Princess should be able to tell that these two are here intentionally to create trouble. Not willing to take me as a master means that they are creating trouble. Forgive me for not understanding. Princess Liuli emotionlessly spoke. Junior is a guest today and by right shouldn't speak too much. However, Junior feels that the Dongshengshan Gate's actions have tarnished the prestige of the Eastern Sage Immortal King. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor waved his hands. Only then did the Deep Flame Immortal King retract his pressure. Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen both stood up, coldly staring at the Deep Flame Immortal King. Deep Flame, sons are like fathers, disciples are like teachers. Blackpeak's attitude is narrow-minded, his talent is low, and he thinks he's infallible. But in reality, he's incompetent and can't even withstand a single strike. For this point, I inherited it from you. For this immortal banquet, the one I killed was your disciple. If there's a day when I break through to the Immortal King realm, I'm afraid the person I kill would be you, Deep Flame. Qin Wentian's eyes flickered with a demonic light. Although he was smiling, his aura was extremely cold. Back then, the Eastern Sage Immortal King humiliated me in our particle world. Today, I rejected the offer to take him as my master and I've already returned the favor. But today, us 2 fellow apprentices obtained the top 3 rankings, yet we were humiliated by the Dongshengshan Gate. For this matter, I, Qin Wentian, will remember it in my heart. I, Jun Mengchen, will also remember it. Their voices were firm, and their gazes revealed a strand of the strong and frivolous obsession of youth. Upon staring at the 2 of them, many in the crowd sighed in their hearts. These 2 were truly extraordinary characters. What a pity, they were courting death. However, Bai Wuya's eyes flashed with a hint of gratification. These 2 were truly worthy of being nurtured by the heavenly talisman realm. Remember? The Deep Flame Immortal King coldly laughed. Did they think they could still live for a long time? At this moment, the Deep Flame Immortal King abruptly inclined his head and stared at the sky. His eyes abruptly gleamed with sharpness, shooting straight up into the clouds. Are they here? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor was extremely curious. Who was the master of Qin Wentian exactly? Why would he dare to come to his Dongshengshan Gate to create trouble? Which friend has come to my Dongshengshan Gate as a guest? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor spoke, his voice piercing through the 9 heavens, causing the eyes of everyone to gleam with sharpness. Was there really an extremely powerful character who came here? In that case, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor's guess might be correct. Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen dared to do this, it was clear that there was an extremely powerful character supporting them from the shadows. Eastern Sage, you don't even recognize your old friend? Right at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out across the world. It was as if it came from all directions, bringing with it a strange aura that seemed to be everywhere. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor frowned. After that, several silhouettes abruptly appeared in the air. These silhouettes were all the same person, and it was as though there were millions of them. This person was clad in black, had long hair, and a demonic smile could be seen in his deep eyes. Upon seeing the appearance of this person, the countenance of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor instantly turned cold. A formless aura gushed up from below, wanting to envelop this entire space. "They're here." Qin Wendian silently mused. The people from the heavenly talisman realm had arrived. Emperor Qianbian. The undying immortal king's countenance also changed when he saw the silhouette in the air. The undying immortal king was extremely experienced and had lived for countless years. He had even witnessed the chaotic era when the Dongxing Heaven Emperor unified the 13 prefectures. Emperor Qianbian. When the experts of the Dongshengshan Gate heard this name, the countenances of several immortal kings all changed. They didn't expect that such an ancient character would actually appear before their eyes. It was rumored that the Emperor Qianbian was a powerful opponent of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor back then. In an extremely ancient era, the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures weren't the 13 prefectures yet. There were a few immortal emperors there, and the strongest among them were the Dongxing Heaven Emperor and Emperor Qianbian. After that, the Emperor Qianbian was defeated and disappeared for countless years. Who would have thought that he would actually appear here today? How could this not cause the expressions of everyone to change? The gazes of everyone turned to Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen. No wonder these people were so outstanding. So it turned out that they were disciples personally nurtured by the Emperor Qianbian, the opponent of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor back then. If this was the case, it wouldn't be surprising if they obtained the top 2 rankings in the Immortal Banquet. If the disciples nurtured by the Dongxing Heaven Emperor participated in this Immortal Banquet, they would also be able to obtain the top 3 rankings. Chapter 891. Emperor Qianbian. Qin Wendian and the others inclined their heads and stared at the newcomer. They didn't feel strange at all. Was this an expert sent by the heavenly talisman realm? The moment he appeared, he was already an immortal emperor. The strength of the heavenly talisman realm might have exceeded the imaginations of Qin Wendian and the others. After all, they had been hiding in the immortal realms for so many years and had nurtured many powerful characters. Qianbian, back then you and I fought for supremacy in the chaotic era and were defeated in the end. Now, you actually sent your disciples to cause trouble at my immortal banquet? The Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He slowly soared up into the air as a formless pressure enveloped this entire space. This invisible pressure was extremely terrifying. What do you mean by causing trouble? The immortal banquet you organized at the Dongshengshan Gate, and the 3 of them came to participate. They wanted to see what kind of geniuses your Eastern Sage 13 prefectures have nurtured. In the end, you should have already seen the ending for yourself. In the air, millions of figures spoke at the same time, their voices echoing throughout the space. It was unknown who the true body was. For those who didn't know the identity of the Emperor Qianbian, they were all stunned. The person who appeared was actually an old rival of the Eastern Sage Emperor. In this case, the appearance of Qin Wendian and the others could be explained. So this was the case. The heavenly talisman realm seems to be intentionally creating this misunderstanding. Qin Wendian and the others silently mused. The moment the Emperor Qianbian appeared, everyone felt that it was only natural, treating them as disciples of the Emperor Qianbian, thinking that the Emperor Qianbian was targeting the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. In this case, no one would think that it was an external power. You nurtured these 3 disciples just for the sake of this immortal banquet? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor stood in the air, it was like he could see through everything with a single glance. The reason why the Emperor Qianbian sent these 3 disciples to participate in the immortal banquet and even personally appeared, it was definitely not just for the sake of the top 3 rankings. Eastern Sage, you are the one who understands me the most. Back then I was defeated and roamed the boundless immortal realms. Now that I have returned to the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures, as your old rival, how do you think you should welcome my return? The many silhouettes of the Emperor Qianbian spoke in unison. An invisible pressure enveloped the entire Dongshengshan Gate, causing everyone in the immortal banquet to feel nervous. The Emperor Qianbian had made a comeback just to send his disciple to participate in an immortal banquet. How do you want me to welcome you? Dongxing Heaven Emperor asked coldly. The Eastern Sage 13 prefectures shall be divided into East and West. I want 6 prefectures. As the Emperor Qianbian spoke, the countenances of many experts instantly changed. The Emperor Qianbian of the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures wanted 6 prefectures. This time around, he made a comeback, wanting to regain the position he lost in the past. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor fell silent. The Emperor Qianbian wanted 6 prefectures. This meant that the Emperor Qianbian was confident that his strength was already sufficient to contend against the Eastern Sage Empire. In the immortal realms, seizing territory firstly depended on the strength of the experts at the peak. If the Emperor Qianbian was inferior to the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, he wouldn't have the qualifications to ask for the division of territory. If not, even if he could kill countless subordinates of the Eastern Sage Empire, the Eastern Sage Empire could still hunt him down endlessly, killing him until he had no path to the heavens or the gates to the earth. This territory would still belong to the Eastern Sage Empire. Hence, unless one was an extremely ruthless person, if one's strength was too weak, they would choose to retreat. At the immortal emperor level, everything had to be done according to the rules. The hearts of the immortal kings below all instantly tensed up as they stared at the Emperor Qianbian in the air. Compared to the Emperor Qianbian wanting 6 prefectures, Qin Wentian and the others obtaining the top 3 rankings wasn't a big deal at all. If he wanted 6 prefectures, this meant that the Dongxing Heaven Emperor would have to evacuate his subordinates and hand them over to the Emperor Qianbian to govern. This meant that the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures would be divided and the sky would change. Some of the immortal kings here were from the Dongshengshan Gate, while others weren't from the Dongshengshan Gate. However, they were all stellar martial cultivators of the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures. The appearance of the Emperor Qianbian would definitely affect the situation of the 13 prefectures. How could they not be nervous? A faint smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face. At this moment, he finally understood. So it turned out that their participation in this immortal banquet, obtaining the top 3 rankings and completing the test was merely the first step of the Heavenly Talisman realm. The true purpose of the Heavenly Talisman realm was actually to seize the 6 prefectures from the hands of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Is the Heavenly Talisman realm preparing to contend for supremacy in the immortal realms? Qin Wentian silently mused. Wait, the Heavenly Talisman realm clearly doesn't intend to expose themselves. If not, given their strength, they would have already conquered the entire Eastern Sage 13 prefectures. There's basically no need for the old rival of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, the Emperor Qianbian, to appear and ask for the 6 prefectures to govern. This is a gradual infiltration. In addition, the Emperor Qianbian is an old rival of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. It's only logical that he would make a comeback and seize back what he lost in the past. No one would suspect anything. Qin Wentian analyzed. The Heavenly Talisman realm wanted to infiltrate the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures step by step and leave no traces behind. Seems like you came here prepared. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor's voice was as imposing as ever, but it was even more solemn than before. He stared at the Emperor Qianbian and asked, which 6 prefectures do you want? Your Dongshengshan Gate is located in the Eastern Prefecture, in the eastern region of the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures. I naturally won't make things difficult for you. I only want 6 prefectures to the west. Your Dongshengshan Gate can still govern 7 prefectures. The Emperor Qianbian replied. It has been so many years since I fought. To think that there would be a battle today at my Dongshengshan Gate. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor coldly spoke. According to the rules of the immortal realms, if the Emperor Qianbian wanted 6 prefectures, he had to be equal to his Dongshengshan Gate in terms of strength. Firstly, the Emperor Qianbian had to be able to stand equally against him, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. If not, he wouldn't have the qualifications to fight with him. As the sound of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor's voice faded, boundless immortal light radiated from him. This kind of light was so bright that people couldn't even open their eyes. His arms trembled as he punched out in the air. In just an instant, The entire space seemed to tremble violently as countless terrifying fist lights appeared in the air. Each fist contained an incomparably fearsome law energy as they blasted towards the silhouettes of the Emperor Qianbian. Above the many silhouettes of the Emperor Qianbian, boundless dark violet lightning suddenly appeared. In an instant, the entire sky transformed into a net of lightning. A fearsome destructive might enveloped the entire Dongshengshan Gate, causing people to feel a sense of doomsday. The silhouettes of the Emperor Qianbian all carried the lightning world on their backs as they pointed their fingers forward. Their finger attacks penetrated through the tens of thousands of fist lights, completely destroying them. Not a single trace of their attacks landed on the Dongshengshan Gate. From this, one could see how terrifying their control was. Qianbian, let's go up and fight. The Dongsheng Heaven Emperor spoke. The Emperor Qianbian nodded, carrying the lightning world on his back as he soared up into the air. If these two supreme experts were to fight at the Dongshengshan Gate, it would be enough to destroy the entire Dongshengshan Gate. Countless people at the Dongshengshan Gate would die. The sin of killing was too heavy. The temperament of people at their level was extraordinary. If there wasn't a life-and-death feud, they wouldn't do such inhumane things. How peaceful. Qin Wentian was silently shocked when he saw this scene. The Emperor Qianbian came to claim 6 prefectures, yet the two of them were so peaceful. It was as though they were just sparring. The crowd raised their heads and stared at the sky. Qin Wentian could only see 2 blurry silhouettes. However, he could see the terrifying scene in the sky. The sky was originally clear, but at this moment, it was shrouded by destructive thunderclouds. The entire sky was filled with terrifying destructive lightning, engulfing the entire Dongshengshan Gate. Even this vast imperial city could see the scene in the sky. As the battle continued, waves of pressure could be felt from the sky. At this moment, the people of the Eastern Immortal City inclined their heads in shock. What was going on? Such a terrifying battle, what level of battle was it exactly? Today, the Dongshengshan Gate should still be hosting the Immortal Banquet, right? What happened during the banquet? There seems to be 2 people. Some of the more powerful characters had extremely good eyesight. They could see through the vast space and could faintly see the blurry silhouettes in the sky. Oh my God, it seems like the Eastern Sage Emperor is fighting against someone. Voices rang out in the Eastern Immortal City, causing the hearts of countless people to tremble. There was someone fighting against the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor. Although the people of the Eastern Immortal City hadn't seen the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor before, they had all seen the statue of the Dongsheng Heaven Emperor before. Not too long after, everyone in the city was staring at the terrifying scene in the sky. Although they didn't know what exactly was happening, they knew that it was definitely something major. At the Immortal Banquet at the Dongshengshan Gate, the Immortal Kings were all staring at the battle in the sky. All of them were incomparably solemn, not daring to be distracted for even a moment. For those who couldn't see the battle, their hearts were all tensed up. The outcome of this battle was simply too terrifying. Qin Wentian, on the other hand, was extremely relaxed. The Emperor Qianbian had arrived and challenged the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor. Regardless of victory or defeat, his crisis had already been resolved. Unless the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor could kill the Emperor Qianbian on the spot, who would dare to obstruct him if an Immortal Emperor wanted to bring him away? If the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor wanted to kill them, the Emperor Qianbian would definitely cause the Dongshengshan Gate to flow with rivers of blood. This point, the Immortal Kings of the Dongshengshan Gate all understood. Since the Emperor Qianbian allowed Qin Wentian and the others to appear here, he definitely wouldn't allow them to die here. The Cloud Prefecture belongs to the western region of the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures. Only to see that at this moment, the Idol Cloud Immortal King was extremely nervous. Once the 6 prefectures were divided into the territories of the Emperor Qianbian, he would be summoned back to the Dongshengshan Gate. From then on, the Cloud Prefecture would no longer be under his jurisdiction. The Emperor Qianbian must have planned this for a very long time. Everyone thought to themselves. Above the sky, there was a terrifying pressure spreading down, and there were even lightning bolts striking down from time to time. Eastern Sage, after our parting in the past, seems like your improvement is limited. The Eastern Sage 13 prefectures shall be divided into the Eastern and Western prefectures. From now on, the 6 prefectures in the Western region shall be governed by me, the Emperor Qinbian. My request shouldn't be too overboard, right? At this moment, a thunderous voice rang out from the air, resounding through the entire Eastern Immortal City, causing the hearts of countless people to tremble. There was a supreme expert who wanted the Dongxing Heaven Emperor to hand over the 6 prefectures in the Western region, allowing him to govern them. This person was none other than the Emperor Qinbian. It was as though he wanted his voice to resound through the entire Eastern Immortal City. Chapter 892. Qianbian, after so many years, your improvement truly isn't small. I have no way to deal with you, but you are the same as well. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor's imposing voice rang out. The two of them battled in the air, both of them seemed to be equally matched. However, if it's just you alone, you still don't have the qualifications to demand the 6 prefectures from me. My Dongshengshan Gate doesn't only have a single immortal emperor. As the sound of his voice rang out, everyone in the Eastern Immortal City felt their hearts trembling. There was actually another immortal emperor in the Dongshengshan Gate. There was a high possibility that this immortal emperor was one of the 4 paragons who followed the Dongxing Heaven Emperor back then. I naturally already know this point. Feel it carefully again. The Emperor Qianbian spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, a moment of silence filled the air. After that, the voice of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor rang out again. Good, you truly came prepared. It's just that even if I hand over the 6 prefectures to you, how can your subordinates contend against my Eastern Sage army? There's one point you should be very clear about. The moment you officially establish your power in the 6 prefectures, it would mean that you are declaring war against my Dongshengshan Gate. My Eastern Sage army will launch an attack anytime. The moment you establish your power, my Eastern Sage army would immediately annihilate you. Other than harming the weak, what's the point of doing so? I've governed the 13 prefectures for so many years, it's not something that your hastily established power can contend against. Also, there's no other power that would dare to submit to you. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor spoke. Wars in the immortal realms naturally had their own rules. If the strength of both parties wasn't equal, there's no doubt that the stronger one would dominate the 13 prefectures. For example, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor was the strongest expert in the 13 prefectures. Although the other powers didn't belong to the Dongshengshan Gate, they had to acknowledge the Dongxing Heaven Emperor as the ruler of the 13 prefectures. If the strength of both parties were equal, for example, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor and the Emperor of Qianbian. In that case, if the Emperor of Qianbian had the intention to establish his own territory in the 13 prefectures, he would have the qualifications to negotiate with the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Unless the Dongshengshan Gate had the strength to defeat the Emperor of Qianbian and expel him, they would have to negotiate with the Emperor of Qianbian. If not, if the Emperor of Qianbian was angered, the consequences would be terrifying. After the Dongxing Heaven Emperor agreed to the division of territories, if the Emperor of Qianbian established his own power, it meant that he would be able to stand against the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. In that case, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor could command the Eastern Sage army to sweep through the territories established by the Emperor of Qianbian. In addition, as long as they didn't attack the headquarters of the Emperor of Qianbian, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor wouldn't be allowed to interfere in the battles between the powers below him. If it was a clash between 2 mature powers, it would be the same as well. For example, if the Dongxing Heaven Emperor wanted to expand his territory and attack the territories of other immortal emperors, it would all be done by his subordinates. Only at the very end would the immortal emperors clash with each other. If not, if the immortal emperors directly started to slaughter the lower echelons of their opponents, that would be a calamity. The entire immortal realms would be plunged into misery and suffering, no power would be able to survive. This was the rule, the hidden rule of the entire immortal realms. Once one side took the initiative to break this rule, it would be very easy for a feud to form. Ordinary people wouldn't be willing to see such a situation. There's no need for you to worry about this. The Emperor of Qianbian calmly spoke. Qianbian, if you don't establish your own power after occupying the 6 prefectures, there's no meaning in that, But if you came here purely to embarrass me for what happened in the past, aren't you lacking in magnanimity? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor coldly snorted. Let's set the time limit of 100 years. Within 100 years, if the power I establish can't survive your Eastern Sage army, I, the Emperor of Qianbian, will naturally give up on the 6 prefectures and return them to you. Not only that, I won't be able to enter the 13 prefectures. The Emperor of Qianbian spoke. Since this was a negotiation, there was a need for both sides to reach an agreement. Both of them were immortal emperors with extraordinary temperaments. They wouldn't do meaningless things. Only 100 years? The Dongxing Heaven Emperor asked. 100 years. The Emperor of Qianbian replied. The two of them conversed in the air, like two old friends having a heart-to-heart chat. There was no anger at all, but each and every word they spoke stirred the hearts of the experts in the Eastern Immortal City. This negotiation would directly affect the situation of the 13 prefectures for the next 100 years. In addition, from the tone of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, it seemed that he truly had the intention of handing over the 6 prefectures to the Emperor of Qianbian for 100 years. There was no more sound in the air. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor seemed to be contemplating. 100 years to him was a very short period of time. He might just need to enter closed-door seclusion a few times. The request of the Emperor of Qianbian wasn't too overboard. After all, the Emperor of Qianbian fought to a draw against him. In that case, the Emperor of Qianbian had the qualifications to negotiate with him about the division of territories. This was the authority of a peak-level expert. I promise you that the 6 prefectures of the western regions, namely the Cloud Prefecture, Thunder Prefecture, Rock Prefecture, Yu Prefecture, Supreme Moon Prefecture and Western Desert Prefecture, will be given to you for 100 years. During this period of time, my Eastern Sage army will launch a punitive expedition against the powers you established. Within 3 months, I will force the Dongshengshan Gate to retreat from the 6 prefectures. After 3 months, the 6 prefectures of the western regions will no longer have a shadow of my Dongshengshan Gate. As for how you want to govern them, that's up to you. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, the entire Eastern Immortal City turned silent. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor actually really gave the Emperor of Qianbian the authority to govern the 6 prefectures of the western regions for 100 years. Such boldness was simply too shocking. Although to peak-level experts, the territory of their sects was secondary and their personal strength was everything, the Eastern Sage Immortal Emperor treated the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures as his base, allowing him to flourish and flourish. Now that he was willing to hand over the 6 prefectures with a single sentence, it was already sufficient to cause the hearts of people to tremble. Qin Wentian, who was below, was extremely astonished. He didn't expect that the contest of territories would be so simple and peaceful. Just a single battle and a few sentences, the 6 prefectures were given away. However, this made Qin Wentian deeply feel the prestige and authority of a peak-level expert. If the Emperor of Qianbian didn't have the strength to fight against the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, he wouldn't even have the qualifications to propose a division of territories. That would simply be courting death. Everything is based on strength. Qin Wentian silently mused. In the air, 2 silhouettes descended. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor swept his gaze over the experts at the immortal banquet as he spoke. Earlier I mentioned the 6 prefectures. All prefectures' lords, prepare to evacuate immediately and temporarily relocate to the Eastern Prefecture. Yes, Your Majesty. The immortal kings of the 6 prefectures bowed as they acknowledged the order, yet their hearts were filled with emotions. This was especially so for the Idle Cloud Immortal King of the Cloud Prefecture. He had established his roots in the Cloud Prefecture for many years and his power was all located there. This time around, he came to participate in the immortal banquet. 3 geniuses of the Cloud Prefecture entered the top 10 and 2 of them entered the top 3. How glorious was this! But the scenes that happened next caused him to be dumbstruck. Right now, even the position of Prefecture King was temporarily stripped away and they had to return to the Dongshengshan Gate to listen to orders. This couldn't help but to make the Idle Cloud Immortal King sigh. Truly, the affairs of the world are unpredictable, it's hard to predict. The idle cloud immortal king turned his gaze in the direction of Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen. These two supreme geniuses actually took the Emperor Qianbian as their master. In the future, how dazzling would they be? Most probably, it was only a matter of time before they became immortal kings. The Emperor Qianbian will receive all of you. However, he isn't someone from the heavenly talisman realm. After this, there will be other senior brothers from the heavenly talisman realm who will receive you. Hence, the matters of the heavenly talisman realm must not be revealed to the Emperor Qianbian. Bai Wuya's voice directly rang out in the minds of Qin Wendian and the others. This voice once again caused the hearts of Qin Wendian and the others to tremble violently as a look of astonishment appeared on their faces. The Emperor Qianbian wasn't someone from the heavenly talisman realm? At this moment, the Emperor Qianbian who was in his human form appeared in the air above them. There was no trace of the aura of the heavenly talisman realm at all. He really wasn't. Qin Wendian was at a loss. Could it be that his conjectures about the heavenly talisman realm were all wrong? How did the heavenly talisman realm get the Emperor Qianbian to come and receive them? However, the hearts of these people were all extraordinary characters. Their expressions instantly returned to normal. At this moment, the Emperor Qianbian appeared before them. He stared at the Dongxing Heaven Emperor and spoke, "Dongxing Heaven Emperor, I'm bringing them away. Since you came personally, you can naturally bring them away." The Dongxing Heaven Emperor had a carefree smile on his face. It was like nothing he had experienced before could shake his state of heart. This caused Qin Wendian to have a whole new level of respect for him. He knew that he had still underestimated immortal emperors. For those who could reach this level, their state of heart must have already reached a transcendent level. "Brother Dongxing, I look forward to our next battle." The Emperor Qianbian smiled. "Farewell. I'm filled with anticipation as well." The Dongxing Heaven Emperor calmly spoke. After that, a powerful surge of energy enveloped Qin Wendian and the other two. A bright light flashed as the Emperor Qianbian brought Qin Wendian, Jun Mengchen, and Zi Qingxian away. He didn't bring Mo Wen along as the three of them had already been exposed as a group. As for Mo Wen, no one knew about it. After they left, the atmosphere at the immortal banquet turned silent. In the end, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor broke the silence as he spoke, "Let's continue." "Yes, Your Majesty." Everyone nodded. However, for the upcoming immortal banquet, the hearts of the spectators were already somewhat absent-minded. The Eastern Sage Immortal sect officially started to recruit disciples. A few rejected, but the majority of them agreed to join the Eastern Sage Immortal sect. In fact, Mo Wen was one of them. She also joined the Eastern Sage Immortal sect, and there were quite a few immortal kings who regarded her highly. Bai Wuya quietly watched on. The heavenly talisman realm had its own rules. It was impossible for people to join other powers. But Mo Wen chose to do so because if this was a mission permitted by the heavenly talisman realm, the rules could naturally be broken. Mo Wen's mission was to enter the Dongshengshan Gate. Qin Wendian who had already left had no idea about this. At this moment, a voice rang out in Qin Wendian's mind. This was a voice transmitted to him by Princess Liuli before he left. This voice was telling Qin Wendian news regarding Qing'er. "City of Ancient Emperors, where is that?" Qin Wendian mumbled. Princess Liuli told him that Qing'er was in the City of Ancient Emperors. Emperor Qianbian's eyes flashed with a dazzling light when he heard Qin Wendian's words. He stared at this young man who obtained the first rank in the immortal banquet at the Dongshengshan Gate. A smile appeared on his face as he spoke, "Cultivate well after you return. The people in the City of Ancient Emperors are all monsters like you." Chapter 893. Qin Wendian and the other two stared at the Emperor of Qianbian only to hear Jun Mengchen asking, Senior brother Qin is the top ranker of the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures while I'm the second ranker, standing at the peak. Wouldn't it be a little too exaggerated to say that everyone in the City of Ancient Emperors is on the same level as senior brother Qin? It's not exaggerated at all. The Emperor of Qianbian turned his gaze towards the horizons, his countenance was calm as he spoke, "The immortal realms are boundlessly vast, experts as common as clouds and countless geniuses. Although you guys are the hegemons of the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures, let me ask you this. Is your opponent Gusu Tianqi weak? Naturally, he won't be weak. Jun Mengchen replied. That's right. Gusu Tianqi is already very strong. In the future, if he receives the guidance of Eastern Sage, his strength would surely rise to another level. Right now, your horizons are only limited to the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures, but what about the entire immortal realms? The Emperor of Qianbian continued, the immortal realms are boundlessly vast. Although immortal emperors are incomparably tyrannical, in the perspective of the entire immortal realms, there's no lack of immortal emperors. The immortal emperors of the immortal realms all have their own children and personal disciples. These people are the true elites of the younger generations. Just take Eastern Sage as an example, he has many children and Dong Xingting is merely one of them. Each and every one of his children is extremely outstanding and the weakest among them wouldn't be inferior to the top rankers of this immortal banquet. Have you guys come into contact with these people before? Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen's countenances stiffened. That's right, the immortal banquet of the Eastern Sage 13 prefectures didn't include the children and disciples of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Among them, there were a few personal disciples of immortal kings who participated and they were already considered very strong. Hua Taishu and Ruthless were both ranked within the top 10 and there were still many other personal disciples of immortal kings who didn't participate. How could they be weak? These people might be tempering themselves in various places in the immortal realms, they had never come into contact with them before. Senior, are you saying that all the peak geniuses of the immortal realms are gathered in the city of ancient emperors? Jun Mengchen asked, feeling some shock in his heart. What sort of place was the city of ancient emperors exactly? The city of ancient emperors is a city of ancient times. It's rumored that the founder of the city of ancient emperors was an ancient emperor character, and the secrets of the ancient emperor exist within. Since ancient times until now, countless people have ventured there to uncover the secrets of the city of ancient emperors. As time flowed by, the city of ancient emperors gained a brand new meaning. All the characters at the peak of the immortal realms would definitely have ventured there before. Over there, you can see geniuses everywhere. Although you guys are already extremely outstanding now, there are also descendants of immortal kings and emperors in the city of ancient emperors. The Emperor Qianbian smiled after he spoke. Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with sharpness. No wonder Qing would be in the city of ancient emperors. Qing was the daughter of the Changqing the Great. It was only natural that she would be sent here to temper herself. I'm a little excited. Jun Mengchen's eyes gleamed with excitement. As an immortal emperor character, the Emperor Qianbian's speed was incomparably fast. He stepped through the air and after some time, they actually arrived in the airspace of the Cloud Prefecture. A silhouette hidden in the darkness appeared in the air. When this person appeared, his entire body was pitch black with only a pair of eyes exposed, giving off an illusory feeling. Is the matter completed? The voice of the black-robed figure rang out. The Emperor Qianbian nodded, Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen obtained the first and second seat respectively. The Dongxing Heaven Emperor has also agreed to let me govern the 6 prefectures in the western regions. MHM, leave the 3 of them to me. You can go. The black-robed figure nodded. The Emperor Qianbian glanced at Qin Wendian and the 2 others as a strange emotion flickered in his eyes. After that, he slowly walked away. He has already left. Let's return to the Heavenly Talisman realm. An instant later, the black-robed figure spoke. We pay our respects to senior brother. Qin Wendian and the 2 others naturally sensed the aura of the Heavenly Talisman realm from the black-robed figure. They were all thinking that this senior brother of theirs was truly mysterious. However, there must be a special reason for him to come into contact with characters of the Emperor Qianbian's level. In the Heavenly Talisman realm, Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen were brought into a pagoda in the Heavenly Talisman realm. This pagoda shone with a golden light that illuminated the skies. However, one had to have a special medallion before they could enter. The black-robed figure also had such a medallion. Evidently, this mysterious senior brother of his had an extraordinary status in the heavenly talisman realm. On the way there, he also introduced himself to Qin Wendian and the two others. The black-robed figure was none other than the Supervisor General Bai Wuya told him about back then. The Supervisor General would monitor everything that happened in the heavenly talisman realm. If there were people who violated the rules of the heavenly talisman realm, they would be killed by the Supervisor General. And if there were people who passed the test, the Supervisor General would also be there to monitor the results. The powerful and mysterious heavenly talisman realm needed the Supervisor General to monitor the movements of the disciples here. Only they would know how many experts there were in the heavenly talisman realm and who they were. The Supervisor General was like an envoy of the heavenly talisman realm lord, maintaining order in the heavenly talisman realm. The reward for this mission was to be able to choose a treasure from the pagoda. Be it a cultivation art, an innate technique or a divine weapon, you could choose any one of them. The cultivation art here seems to be very powerful. Jun Mengchen swept his gaze over the surroundings. The difficulty of this mission isn't low, the rewards naturally wouldn't be too bad. Qin Wendian walked around the walls and observed what he wanted. The 9 Immortals War art can allow one to form 9 avatars to fight at the same time. At this moment, Jun Mengchen mumbled in a low voice. His eyes gleamed with a dazzling light. Senior brother, this 9 Immortals War art is so powerful. Seems like I'm truly a frog at the bottom of a well, to think that there's actually such a powerful immortal art that allows one to form 9 avatars to fight at the same time. It's equivalent to 9 of you fighting at the same time. How terrifying. Such a terrifying ability would definitely have a flaw. Let's observe it carefully. Qin Wendian walked to the side of Jun Mengchen. He had cultivated a technique that allowed him to form tens of thousands of avatars in an instant. However, using it once would consume a terrifying amount of energy. 9 Immortals War art, the 9 avatars will consume the energy of the original body. Once the energy is depleted, the avatars will disappear. Jun Mengchen mumbled as he read the introduction of this art. However, Jun Mengchen was still somewhat tempted. At the very least, for a short period of time, he would be able to form 9 avatars and attack at the same time. How powerful would that be? Senior brother, how about I choose it? Jun Mengchen's eyes shone with excitement. You're too impatient. There are still so many treasures, why are you in such a hurry? Qin Wendian spoke in a low voice. Although this technique is powerful, it's useless if you are facing opponents weaker than you. If you are facing opponents with terrifying speed, the effect would be limited. Only when you are fighting against experts of similar strength would you be able to unleash its greatest effect. If you cultivate in other innate techniques, you would be able to raise your combat prowess to the next level and wouldn't lose out to the 9 Immortals War art. You're right, let me take another look then. Jun Mengchen smiled awkwardly. His personality was a little impatient, but his senior brother Qin Wendian could see it clearly. Immortal Illusion Diagram, one can use it to create a grand illusion realm, trapping immortal foundation characters. The stronger the user, the greater the power. Jun Mengchen and Qin Wendian both felt their hearts stirring when they saw another treasure. As expected of the heavenly talisman realm, the treasures and manuals here were all extremely valuable. How good would it be if we could move all of them away? Jun Mengchen joked. Heavenly Tribulation Undying Dharma Body, this art can allow one to refine a Supreme Tribulation body, granting them boundless might. Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen continued searching for immortal arts. The 1,000 Cauldron Treasured Tome can be used to forge immortal cauldrons. Each and every one of these cauldrons contains supreme offensive power, incomparably tyrannical. Qin Wendian felt his heart stirring when he saw an innate technique, but he still chose to endure it. The pagoda contained many innate techniques and treasures. Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen's heartbeats quickened. There were simply too many powerful innate techniques and divine weapons that caused their hearts to palpitate. They wanted to obtain all of them. However, they could only choose one. I found it, I will cultivate this art. At this moment, Jun Mengchen finally found what he was looking for. Qin Wendian turned his gaze over, only to see Jun Mengchen standing there. On the stone wall in front of him, there was an introduction of this cultivation art. Eternal Emperor Art. This immortal art cultivates the power of an emperor, creating a 9-layered monarch physique, becoming an eternal emperor. This was an incomparably tyrannical cultivation art. There weren't many introductions, only a few words. However, Jun Mengchen seemed to have already decided to choose this art. Qin Wendian didn't say anything else and replied, "Since you have decided, let's go with it then." Jun Mengchen nodded. After that, he closed his eyes as his consciousness rushed into the stone wall. In an instant, a tyrannical cultivation art was transmitted into his mind. Qin Wendian continued searching for what he wanted. At this moment, he came to a place where there was a rather unique art, the 10,000 Laws record. The reason why it was so unique was because of the introduction at the side. The 10,000 Laws record isn't a cultivation art, nor is it an innate technique. One has to be cautious when cultivating it. This art is targeted towards the myriad of laws. Any innate techniques or immortal arts can be cultivated using the 10,000 Laws record, allowing them to evolve into stronger techniques. The higher one's comprehension, the greater the improvement. For those with low comprehension, the 10,000 Laws record would be useless and might even affect their original cultivation. Qin Wendian couldn't help but feel shock in his heart when he saw the introduction. This art could be used to cultivate the myriad of laws, allowing immortal arts and innate techniques to evolve into stronger techniques. The higher one's comprehension, the stronger the transformation. This was simply a heaven-defying ability. However, for those with low comprehension, this 10,000 Laws record was useless and might even affect stellar martial cultivators. Cultivating this art could even be said to be extremely risky. The Fiend God Heavenly Suppression art is used to support the Fiend God Body Refinement art. I also have the Spirit Refinement method, the Wind Rock art, and the Sky Rock Talisman Bone I obtained during the Immortal Banquet. I'm already well equipped with all sorts of innate techniques and innate techniques. It's just that the grade of the Fiend God Heavenly Suppression art isn't as high as these immortal arts in front of me. But if I want to change my cultivation art, I would have to cultivate it all over again and it would be hard for me to find one that's compatible with my current strength. Why don't I choose this 10,000 Laws record? Qin Wendian silently mused. He instantly made up his mind as his eyes gleamed with sharpness. His consciousness directly entered the stone wall and instantly, countless runes floated into Qin Wendian's mind, entering his memories. This was none other than the 10,000 Laws record. Chapter 894. After Qin Wendian and Jun Mengchen obtained the immortal art, they walked out of the pagoda. The supervisory general was no longer around and Zi Qingxian had left as well. "Let's go." Qin Wendian spoke. The two of them flickered and an instant later, they saw Zi Qingxian sitting on a stone platform on a mountain peak, staring into the horizons. "Senior sister." Jun Mengchen increased his speed, appearing beside Qin Wendian. "Did you get the reward?" Zi Qingxian inclined her head and smiled at them. "Michum, sis Qingxian. If there's another chance in the future, you will definitely be able to do it." Jun Mengchen wanted to console Zi Qingxian, only to see a self-mocking smile on Zi Qingshuan's face. "Don't worry, I'm not that weak. You guys go ahead and cultivate, I'm going to enter closed-door seclusion for a period of time. We all believe in you." Qin Wendian smiled at Zi Qingxian. Zi Qingxian stretched out her hand and combed her hair. A rarely seen radiant smile appeared on her face as she stared at Qin Wendian. "You have to work hard too. If not, you might be surpassed by me next time." "I'm filled with anticipation." Qin Wendian's eyes flashed with sharpness. Zi Qingxian stood up and departed. "Let's go, I've improved quite a bit in this immortal banquet. I'm going to enter closed-door seclusion as well." Qin Wendian spoke to Jun Mengchen. The two of them then split up and began to search for their own cultivation grounds. Qin Wendian came to the top of a cliff. This place was exceedingly quiet. A light breeze caressed his body, causing his long robes to flutter. He closed his eyes and began his closed-door seclusion. The wind continued to blast against Qin Wentian's face, yet it was as though he didn't feel anything. He was like an old monk in meditation, there was nothing in the external world that could disturb him. In the external world, the news of the immortal banquet at the Dongshengshan Gate gradually circulated around the 13 prefectures at a terrifying speed. The names of Qin Wentian, Jun Mengchen, Gusu Tianqi and Hua Taishu were all known by countless experts. This was especially true for Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen. The two of them were ranked first and second respectively, but they refused the Dongxing Heaven Emperor's invitation to become his disciple. This was because it was rumored that they had already become the disciple of the Emperor of Qinbian. They came to attend the immortal banquet just to embarrass the Dongshengshan Gate. The Emperor of Qinbian also took this opportunity to propose to the Dongxing Heaven Emperor that he should divide the 6 prefectures in the west. From now on, the eastern sage 13 prefectures split. The 6 prefectures of the western regions, as well as the powers under the Dongshengshan Gate, all started to retreat. The majestic residences of the prefectures were all empty, yet nobody dared to occupy them. Naturally, there was one exception. And that person was none other than the Emperor of Qinbian. 3 months later, after the Dongshengshan Gate completely retreated from the Dongshengshan Gate, the Emperor of Qinbian gathered the peak experts of the 6 prefectures in the Cloud Prefecture. All the experts came to pay their respects. This was a character who could contend against the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. Even the Dongxing Heaven Emperor had no choice but to hand over the 6 prefectures to him. A banquet that was even grander compared to the once-a-100-year immortal banquet at the Dongshengshan Gate was held in the Cloud Prefecture. The experts of the 6 prefectures all came, and the major powers of the Cloud Prefecture were all trembling with fear. There was no other reason than because they had a grudge with Qin Wentian. And now, Qin Wentian and Jun Mengchen were already recognized as the personal disciples of the Emperor of Qinbian. Luckily, during this banquet, the silhouettes of Qin Wentian and the others couldn't be seen. The experts in the Cloud Prefecture were as common as the clouds. However, there were also undercurrents flowing in the dark. During this banquet, the Emperor of Qinbian announced the establishment of the immortal Qinbian Gate. The location of the sect would be the Prefecture King Manor of the Cloud Prefecture, and the sect would officially recruit disciples. This was a sect established by a powerful existence that could contend against the Dongxing Heaven Emperor. By right, there should be many who would respond. However, in reality, not a single major power in the 6 prefectures dared to announce their intention to join the immortal Qinbian Gate. The reason was very clear. Back then during the immortal banquet at the Dongshengshan Gate, the Dongxing Heaven Emperor had already said that if the Emperor of Qinbian established a sect, his eastern sage army would definitely destroy it. Although the Emperor of Qinbian himself was incomparably powerful and could contend against the Dongxing Heaven Emperor, how could the newly established power be able to contend against the eastern sage army of the Dongxing Heaven Emperor? An army of 1,000,000 soldiers that had been tempered for countless years wasn't a joke. They could easily sweep through any major power in the 13 prefectures. Whoever dared to join the immortal Qinbian Gate would simply be courting death. However, the changes in the Cloud Prefecture temporarily had nothing to do with Qin Wentian. Right now, he was still in closed-door seclusion in the Heavenly Talisman realm, ignoring the external affairs. In the outer periphery of the boundlessly vast immortal realms, there were countless particle worlds. They floated around the immortal realms, resembling a speck of dust in the starry space. These particle worlds were all different from each other, with a myriad of oddities. In one of the countless particle worlds, there was a mysterious region. The aura of life and death in this region was extremely dense, and it was none other than a tribe in this particle world. This tribe was named the Death God Tribe. Outside this tribe, there was a vast wilderness filled with dense death aura. Very few people would be able to pass through this place and arrive before their tribe. On the ancient gate of the tribe, there was a diagram engraved on it. It was the diagram of the Permitha flower, a symbol of death. The Permitha flower was the totem of this tribe. It possessed the power of life and death and was extremely terrifying. In the wilderness ahead, the aura of death was as dense as ever. However, amidst the death aura, there was a faint trace of life force that was moving closer and closer to the Permitha flower tribe. A rustling sound could be heard as a figure slowly walked out from the field that was filled with an aura of death. This was the silhouette of a young man. He was clad in simple and tattered robes. The contours of his face were tough and filled with masculinity. Although he was covered in dust, it wasn't able to conceal his handsomeness. His steps were extremely steady as he moved forward, moving towards this primitive tribe. The young man moved closer and closer to the tribe. Finally, there were people who discovered his existence. Many of them flickered as they walked towards the entrance of the tribe. Their gazes were cold as they stared at the young man who just arrived. Their gazes were filled with an intense malice as they spoke in the language of this ancient tribe. The young man couldn't understand what they were saying at all. "I'm here to retrieve some Permitha flowers." The young man continued moving forward as he spoke. The people of the tribe seemed to be able to understand his words as their expressions drastically changed. Their eyes gleamed with a wild light, extremely terrifying to the extreme, as though they were filled with a thirst for blood. They all rushed towards the young man, wielding all sorts of weapons in their hands as they rushed towards him. The young man waved his hands as the experts of the tribe were all flung away. Not a single one of them was able to get close to him. He continued moving forward and soon after, he entered the tribe. More and more people from the tribe surrounded him. However, the young man merely continued moving forward calmly. Everywhere he passed by, no one could even get half a step near him. Finally, a tyrannical aura drifted over from afar. The people of the tribe all knelt on the ground, their eyes filled with respect. This was the arrival of the priest of the tribe. "Sir, who are you? What business do you have with our tribe?" One of them spoke, using the same language as the young man. "I'm here to retrieve some Permitha flowers. I hope you can make an exception." The young man clasped his hands behind his back as he stared ahead. "The blooming of the Permitha flower determines life and death, it's the totem of our tribe. How can you take it just like that?" That person spoke in a domineering manner. "Since this is the case, I can only do it myself." The young man continued moving forward. The experts in front of him all released their constellations as a phenomenon manifested in the sky. The death chi in the air was incomparably dense, and a gigantic gray silhouette could be faintly seen in the air. Those kneeling tribesmen were even more respectful than before, as though they had just seen a divinity. Their words were spoken in a language that the young man couldn't understand. However, the young man acted as though he didn't see it. These ignorant tribesmen might think that the phenomenon in the sky was the will of a divinity, but the young man understood that this was merely a constellation manifested when one's cultivation reached a certain level. In the air above him, a dazzling constellation also manifested, resembling a terrifying diagram. The tribesmen were all dumbfounded, as though they had seen an inconceivable scene. Their eyes were filled with bewilderment and bewilderment. The young man waved his hands, and as he stepped out, the constellation in the air swept out, directly blasting into the bodies of the grand priests. In just a short instant, the expressions of terror on the faces of the tribesmen changed. The young man flicked his sleeves, sending them flying through the air as he continued forward. The constellations of these tribesmen were simply too weak, they weren't his match at all. The tribesmen all had looks of terror on their faces. It was as though the conviction in their hearts had crumbled, as they fell into a state of temporary madness. Their mental state and conviction suffered an unprecedented impact. Who was the true divinity here? Nobody could obstruct the young man's footsteps. He continued on his way to the deepest parts of the tribe. In front of him, the death chi was extremely intense. Over there, the Permitha flowers bloomed, possessing their own spirituality and could determine life and death. The blooming of the Permitha flower determines life and death. How can life and death be determined? The young man mumbled. A scroll flew out as a powerful sealing energy sealed away the death chi. After which, some of the Permitha flowers were swept up and sealed within. An instant later, the silhouette of the young man flickered as he departed the area. So it turned out that this young man was none other than the other body of Qin Wentian. His name was Di Tian, and he was brought along by the protectors of the immortal palace to roam the various particle worlds, tempering himself unceasingly. Hence, Qin Wendian had experienced the tempering of two lives. He wasn't someone ordinary people could compare to. His state of mind was extraordinary, and he was incomparably resilient. The two bodies of Qin Wendian treasured time, working hard in their cultivation as they improved unceasingly. In the various worlds, they were extremely inconspicuous existences, like duckweed. They could only strengthen themselves unceasingly, allowing their roots to be more stable in the various worlds. They wouldn't be uprooted by the wind, turning into dust that could be swept away by the wind. In another particle world, the night wind was cool. A beautiful silhouette whose beauty could topple empires stood before the window, staring at the green mountains and ancient trees swaying gently in the wind. She then thought back to that young man who rose up from an insignificant position but overturned the rule of the royal sacred sect. The moonlight was poignant and beautiful, and in that place, there seemed to be his radiant smile. How many nights had it been that Qin Wendian's countenance would appear together with the moonlight in that pair of beautiful eyes? Chapter 895. Time flowed by, in the vast immortal realms, 1,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, 4 years have already passed since the immortal banquet at the Dongshengshan Gate. In the Cloud Prefecture, the Emperor Qianbian has already established his 1,000 transformations army. The immortal Qianbian Gate has already begun to show its might. The experts of the 5 prefectures in the western regions all revered him as their emperor. However, there were still no major powers that took the initiative to join the immortal Qianbian Gate. The threat of the Dongshengshan Gate was still there. The Eastern Sage Army could be sent over at any moment to destroy the 1,000 Transformations Army. In the Cloud Prefecture, in the Jiangling country. In the ancient Drift Snow City, snowflakes drifted unceasingly. The 9 immortality bells chimed unceasingly as beams of resplendent light shot up into the air, entering a divine weapon that was currently being forged. In the center of the 9 immortality bells, a young man sat cross-legged. He was clad in simple white robes, yet his magnificence couldn't be concealed. At this moment, with a wave of his hand, boundless runic light gushed forth from the 9 immortality bells, entering the divine spear in the air. In an instant, immortal light gushed forth, piercing through the skies. Another immortal rank divine weapon was forged. As expected of the disciple of the monarch, a supreme character that obtained the position of top ranker in the immortal banquet at the Dongshengshan Gate. In the surroundings of the ancient Drift Snow City, several figures stared at the young man with shock in their eyes. This white-robed young man was none other than Qin Wendian. Forging an immortal ranked weapon alone. As the disciple of the monarch, he actually used the ancient Drift Snow City to forge an immortal ranked weapon. Most probably, he isn't willing to rely on his master. Many experts silently speculated. Upon seeing Qin Wendian forging an immortal ranked weapon, the people in the surroundings couldn't help but sigh in admiration at Qin Wendian's talent. When they thought back to the scenes in the ancient Drift Snow City back then, they couldn't help but sigh. Once, when Qin Wendian was in the ancient Drift Snow City, he was surrounded and hunted by the various major powers. There were countless experts who wanted to kill Qin Wendian and seize the secrets of the ancient Drift Snow City for themselves. Qin Wendian borrowed the power of the ancient Drift Snow City to kill many of them. At that time, no one would have imagined that Qin Wendian would have such achievements in the future. Right now, Qin Wendian was forging weapons in the ancient Drift Snow City. Those major powers no longer dared to antagonize him. This was the Cloud Prefecture, the territory of the Emperor Qianbian. Who would dare to touch the disciple of the legendary Emperor Qianbian? Qin Wendian soared up into the air, keeping his divine weapon. His silhouette flickered as he appeared beside a beautiful maiden. This maiden was none other than Pei Yu, who had fallen in love with the Drift Snow Master. "You're not leaving?" Qin Wendian asked. This Pei Yu's obsession was too deep. Back then, he didn't expect that Pei Yu would eventually fall in love with the Drift Snow Master because of the love between him and Immortal Jade. "It's fine, this place is pretty good." Pei Yu shook her head, stretching her hands out to gently stroke the falling snowflakes. Okay then, the Drift's now master is after all an ancient person. Don't sink too deep in love with him. Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice. I know. Pei Yu smiled at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian silently shook his head as he turned and departed. Several figures followed after Qin Wentian. After that, he took out an interspatial ring and spoke to someone beside him. Sell these immortal ranked divine weapons and help me exchange them for the Sky Demon Oracle Bone as well as some Yuan Meteor Stones to support my cultivation. Right. An Immortal Foundation expert beside him nodded. He kept the interspatial ring and the group of them soared into the air, directly departing the Drift's now city. Qin Wentian didn't turn his head back. This Drift's now city was a moving city. The entire city was a treasure. However, he currently didn't have the strength to bring the entire Drift's now city away. The group of them stood on a flying boat, flying at an astonishing speed as they returned to the Cloud Prefecture city. Their speed was extremely fast and it didn't take long before they arrived outside the Drift's now city. Up ahead, a group of figures exuded a cold intent as they walked over. Still not giving up. Qin Wentian stared ahead as he icily spoke. During this half a year, he had suffered over 10 assassinations. The first time was the most dangerous and after that, every time he went out, there would be experts sent by the Emperor Qianbian to protect him. Kill. The experts in front didn't say a word. Their bodies instantly radiated an incomparably tyrannical immortal light as they rushed towards Qin Wentian. The experts around Qin Wentian all rushed out. A figure stood beside Qin Wentian, using immortal light to protect Qin Wentian's body. Lingering like ghosts, they only send out a small number of experts each time. What do they mean by this? Qin Wentian's countenance flickered with coldness. Those who came to assassinate him didn't even reveal their identities. But for those who dared to assassinate him in the 6 prefectures of the western regions, there was no need to ask further. They were definitely people from the Dongshengshan Gate. As for who gave the order to kill him, no one knew. Maybe it was Dongxing Ting, the Deep Flame Immortal King, or other people from the Dongshengshan Gate who wanted his life. An intense collision instantly erupted ahead. Qin Wentian was like a spectator, it had nothing to do with him. At this moment, a formless gigantic palm imprint abruptly manifested in the air, blotting out the sun as it directly smashed towards Qin Wentian. There was no way to resist at all. Careful! The expert beside Qin Wentian roared. He didn't resist, instead, he pulled Qin Wentian along as he retreated. But although that gigantic palm imprint hadn't descended, it had already sealed the entire space. Qin Wentian actually felt that he couldn't move at all as the light barrier protecting him shattered. Bzz. An intense burst of immortal light radiated forth. Just when the pressure was about to kill Qin Wentian, a silhouette abruptly appeared beside Qin Wentian. This silhouette was none other than the Emperor of Qianbian. Scram! The Emperor of Qianbian spat out a single word. His voice seemed to be able to bore through the void, causing the space before him to tremble violently, as though it was about to shatter. Far away, a silhouette appeared from the void, his entire body was shrouded in and out of existence. To think that the Emperor of Qianbian would actually be so protective of a disciple. The expert at the front spoke, feeling shock in his heart. The Emperor of Qianbian actually left a powerful immortal sense on Qin Wentian. In this case, there was no way for him to kill Qin Wentian. I initially thought that you guys were just messing around. But this time around, you guys actually sent out an immortal king expert proficient in spatial energy to assassinate him. Are you guys really aiming for his life? Is the Dongshengshan Gate really that fearless? The Emperor of Qianbian's immortal sense radiated a terrifying pressure as his voice turned ice cold. Emperor of Qianbian's words are too serious. We only want to see how much importance the Emperor of Qin Wentian values this disciple of yours. Would he really kill you? That person laughed. After that, the energy in the air surged and in an instant, that person's aura unceasingly drifted away, dissipating very quickly. The other experts all retreated and the battle soon calmed down. The Emperor of Qianbian didn't chase after those Immortal Foundation characters. What status did he have? Killing a few Immortal Foundation characters would only cause him to lose face. Let's return. The Emperor of Qianbian waved his hand, bringing Qin Wendian away. Not too long after, they returned to the immortal Qianbian Gate of the Cloud Prefecture. This was also the manor of the Prefecture Lord of the past. However, it has already been remodeled by the Emperor of Qianbian. The immortal sense of the Emperor of Qianbian dissipated. Qin Wendian entered the immortal gate alone. Many people bowed when they saw Qin Wendian appearing as they called out, "Young Master Qin." Qin Wendian's expression didn't change. Right now, not only in the outside world, even within the immortal Qianbian gate, Qin Wendian was treated as the personal disciple of the Emperor of Qianbian. Also, the Emperor of Qianbian had never denied it. It was like he had tacitly agreed to it, intentionally giving Qin Wendian this identity. Qin Wendian naturally wouldn't explain it to others. Since the Emperor of Qianbian could appear at the Dongshengshan Gate to receive them back then, he definitely had an extraordinary relationship with the Heavenly Talisman Realm. Even if he didn't know the existence of the Heavenly Talisman Realm, he would definitely have a deep connection with them. Not long after, Qin Wendian stepped into the depths of the Immortal Gate. Before him, a figure was currently watering the flowers on the ground, appearing extremely carefree. Emperor Lord. Qin Wendian walked over and stared at the figure in front of him. You're back. In the future, your actions in the 6 prefectures will be restricted. Do you have any plans? The Emperor of Qianbian didn't turn back as he casually spoke. Emperor Lord, can you send me to the city of ancient emperors? Qin Wendian asked. The Emperor of Qianbian turned and stared at Qin Wendian as he smiled. Have you made up your mind? Qin Wendian nodded. Because of the uniqueness of the city of ancient emperors, there was a very high threshold to enter. Only immortal kings and emperors had the qualifications to send people into the city of ancient emperors. Hence, the vast majority of experts in the city of ancient emperors were either descendants of immortal kings or geniuses of their sections. Right now, your cultivation base has stabilized at the 7th level of celestial phenomenon. After you enter the city of ancient emperors, don't come out again. It would be best if you can break through to the immortal foundation realm in the city of ancient emperors. If not, at the very least, cultivate to the peak of celestial phenomenon before coming out. The Emperor of Qianbian spoke. Right, I will remember the Emperor Lord's words. Qin Wendian nodded. When do you want to set off? The Emperor of Qianbian asked again. I still have to wait for Mengchen to return. We can set off together. Qin Wendian replied. Sure, you can go then. The Emperor of Qianbian started watering the flowers again. Qin Wendian bowed slightly before he turned and departed. Several days later, the Immortal Foundation expert from before sent the Sky Demon Oracle Bone and many Yuan Meteor Stones to Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian used the Sky Demon Oracle Bone to continue his cultivation. As his strength grew stronger, his fleshly body grew more and more terrifying. In the blink of an eye, several months passed. Today, Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian entered the Thousand Transformations Immortal Palace and headed straight for the Emperor Lord's palace. Jun Mengchen directly called out, Emperor Lord, is my senior brother here? I've already called him over. The Emperor of Qianbian casually replied. Right. Jun Mengchen nodded. Not long after, Qin Wendian slowly walked over. Upon seeing Jun Mengchen and Zi Qingxian, a smile flickered in his eyes as he spoke, you guys are here. I guessed that my senior brother should be here with the Emperor Lord. Senior brother, didn't you mention the city of ancient emperors before? Do you want to go? Jun Mengchen asked. I've been waiting for you precisely because of this matter. I've already requested the Emperor Lord to set off after you return. How about we set off now? Qin Wendian stared at the two of them as he asked. Sure, me too. Jun Mengchen smiled and nodded. Let's set off then. The Emperor of Qianbian couldn't help but to smile when he saw how eager they were. With a wave of his hand, he took a step out and directly vanished from sight. Qin Wentian and the other two also vanished from their original location.